G'day. It's time to down your unders. Review and dissection of content from some of the sharpest minds in the game. Hosted by Adam Camilleri. Art of War. Down Under.
G'day everybody and welcome to the last freaking week of Grotmas that I'm ever gonna do in my life until they do it again for us next year. But I'm at the end of my tether with my Grotmas reviews and I still have quite a few to go. This episode I'm hoping to have 4 beautiful segments for you, the first of which I'm joined by one of my most favoritist of people in the whole dang world. His name is Jack freaking Harpster, ITC champion, LVO winner, recently came third at the LVO this year wielding this detachment, so only app that we have him on. Hello, brother. Welcome.
Hello, Adam. You happen to be one of my favorite people as well. Always good to talk to you.
You're a sweetie. We're here to review Angelic Inheritors, which you took to extreme success at the LVO and elsewhere as well. I've watched you, crushing some skulls in the war room with it.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite detachment currently that exists. Like my most favorite to put on the table and just play with, and it's just a blast.
I totally agree. I think it's thematic, it's exciting, it's powerful, and it's I'm jealous. I am super jelly from a Space Marine's point of view that Blood Angels just keep getting exciting, fun things to do with their army, and many do not. Many are quite the languishing, redhead the stepchild of this conglomerate. But of course, we're going to be doing a full review of the Angelic Inheritors detachment. In addition, this episode, I'm hoping, and please don't hold me to it if it's not the case, because I'm trying to juggle a lot of things at the moment. I'm hoping to have Innez Wilson on for a review of Final Day for Tyranids, Dean Sinnbeck for the World Eaters one, whatever it's called, Vessels of Wrathfulnesses. And then lastly, I'm hoping to get Kyle Grundy on to do the Tau Auxiliary Cadre. So it should be a pretty long episode. And to that note, we are going to jump straight freaking in. And of course, you can get a part 2 of each one of these segments, conglomerated, joined up together for your beautiful viewing pleasure over at Art of War Down Under over on Patreon. Jackie boy, is this the best Blood Angels detachment?
Yes. I think so. After playing with it a lot, I would say it is. It's the most flexible. Liberators is good from a standard, I want to run forward and charge people perspective. But in my opinion, Angelic Inheritors is just as good at buffing melee units as Liberators is, just in a different way of doing it. And then you open up a lot of good utility in shooting and non-interactivity and stuff like that really helps this list get off the ground. Also, reliability is huge here. You get re-rolling, and you get all of those buffs even if you did not charge, which is a big weakness of Liberators. Liberators, my plan is, like when I play World Eaters into them or some other melee, is I just charge them, and they can interrupt. They can, they can't find death anymore. That was a thing in the past, but they can interrupt. They can do whatever they want. But when they do that on my turn, they're going to be, 3-4 attacks at strength 4, and I don't really care. On their turn, they can hit me as hard as they want. It's going to be gnarly. But on my turn, nah, not so much.
So I have a couple of different perspectives on this as just an analyst of different Space Marine stuff, especially. I don't think this should be compared to Liberator. I think this should be compared to Gladius, because this sits at I have this thing in my head where there's the one mode Space Marine detachments, like Stormlance, there's the one thing that they do. This is the one thing that they do. And Liberator is one of those one mode detachments, whereas Gladius is the everyman detachment. It's the every game style, every unit detachment. I feel like that's much more akin to what this is. This is a Blood Angels tuned Gladius more than it's a.
It is. I really like it for that, but I also really like it for something that Liberators has, which is an always on damage buff.
Yes,
which is super helpful at being consistent in terms of just doing reliable damage from every unit all the time, which is
agreed. And so the only other thing I'll say is that I think, like, unit to unit comparison, if you're gonna get in a vacuum and compare Liberator to Inheritors, so you can make a unit of Sangard like twice as good as you can make any single unit in Liberators, but their 3 Outriders with no adjoined characters are going to be better than everything except your better units. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're gonna wind up having fewer units in your army with Angelic Inheritors, because Now I've cut down. I think I only have 5 characters in my list at this point, maybe.
Oh, geez, such restraint. Oh,
I know. But Liberators lists are going to be running significantly fewer than that. It's usually
correct. One or
just a
two.
couple for the standard Bloodless Angels build.
Yeah.
But what I'll say is that they have some issues even then. A lot of those units have trouble getting through good armor saves with Armor Contempt because they happen to be, a lot of crap data sheets that are handed +2 strength, +1 attack.
Yeah.
And when you do that to a crap data sheet, you don't buff the AP at all. And so Armor Contempt or 2-up armor save can really just shut you out, or God forbid, both. Whereas this buffs good data sheets, which means you're going to have fewer units that do more.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's jump into the meat and potatoes. So, Legacy of the Angel is the army rule, and as of course with all the Grotmas detachments, I'm going to be reading all the things, and Jack's going to be giving us all the expert insight. So, Legacy of the Angel, at the start of the first battle round, select 2 angelic legacy abilities listed below. Until the end of the battle, those angelic legacy abilities are active, and their effects apply to all Adeptus Astartes character units from your army. First of which is Sanguinary Grace. This unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. Carmine Wrath. Each time model in this unit makes an attack, reroll 1s to hit and 1s to wound, and then their appointed hour. You can reroll advance and charge rolls made for this unit. And then there is a restriction here. Your army can include Blood Angels units, but no other Adeptus. The usual subfaction Astartes, keyword stuff.
Don't try to put Archangels in this detachment, please.
Correct. How do you feel about this detachment rule, and which of the 3 options do you prioritize or not prioritize, and how do you weigh them up?
So first off, it's an insane detachment rule.
Incredible.
I have played probably about 35 games with this army at this point, and I have only ever selected 2 modes ever. I've only ever selected 2 of them, and I've never selected the third. And the 2 that you pick, and it's not even close, is fallback, shoot, and charge, reroll hits and wounds of 1. Not particularly close. I've seen a lot of people online talking about how you pick their appointed hour because you're a melee army and you reroll advances and charge rolls because that's what melee armies do. And you absolutely, under no circumstances, pick their appointed hour. You just will not do that. You can do that for a CP if it's absolutely necessary. But there is no other way in this detachment to fall back and shoot and charge. And getting trapped in combat is the worst. And the army has a ton of power because every single unit you can take your opponent's hit, you hit them, they hit you. Every single one of your units then falls back and shoots and charges back in, and you just rip your opponent up by the roots. Obviously, the best one, I don't think anyone's particularly, confused by this, is going to be real hits and wounds of 1. It is
correct.
Centerpiece around which this army functions, which is that every single character unit, and that can be a single character model, it can be a unit led by a character, will all reroll hits and wounds of 1 all the time. And that is absurd. The amount of reliability that has in your army, and not even reliability, just like increased damage, needs to be seen to be believed. Because you look at Liberators, and it's very easy to see how that increases your damage, right? You just make numbers and bigger. But I played this for the first time into Quentin, and the 7th, 8th time in the turn, I was re-rolling hits and wounds of 1 on a unit. Quentin was it just felt like I had full reels to hit and wound across my army all the time.
That's what I was about to say. It makes your character units virtually oath agnostic. Your character units no longer need oath. Oath becomes a flexibility rather than being the thing you need to slap down on the thing that needs to die every turn. So I think it's extremely freeing.
Yes, it's very freeing on oath. So you get oath to do very specific things. Either that's a unit that absolutely has to die except no substitutes, then it gets oathed. Or it's what the Vindicators are shooting at, or it's a unit that's -1 to hit, so you need to make sure you hit it even, through the -1. Stuff like that, as opposed to wanting to oath 3 things on the turn and only being able to do 1.
Yep, agreed. All right, into the enhancements. First is Prescient Flash, 20 points. Adeptus Astartes model only. Models in the Bearers unit have Scout 6. Is this one any good, mate?
It's good. I never wind up including it. And the reason for that is I don't tend to take units that want it. If you have a captain in Company Heroes, you probably want to consider Prescient Flash. If you have some kind of infantry shooting unit that is short range, i.e. like Hellblasters, but please don't do that to yourself, or Eradicators, which is an interesting idea, then you probably want to give that unit Prescient Flash so it's not stranded in your deployment zone. But generally, I'm taking like Sanguinary Guard, which don't particularly need it. They're not going to say no, but like I'm not going to spend 20 on it. So it doesn't work its way into my list, but I'm not taking units that want it.
Fair enough. Troubling Visions is up next for 15 points. Once per battle in your command phase, the bearer can use this enhancement when it does until the start of your next command phase. All legacy abilities see left, pretty much the one you didn't take, are active for you instead of only 2 of them. So you get all 3 once per battle. I'm not sure this is that great either.
Hot trash. Trash. It is so bad. It might be one of the worst enhancements in the game, actually. So let me just run you through what this means. Once per battle, because remember, it says you get 3 abilities, but you already had 2 of them, so you're just getting
correct. You're getting 1.
If you are, if you're a good boy and you took the correct buffs, then this means that this text essentially reads, once per game in your command phase, you can decide to reroll advances and charge rolls for your unit for the rest of the turn.
Yeah.
So bad. It should just be you just have 3 up all the time. Because I don't even know if I would take it at that point. But for whatever you need to call when you think you're going to fail your charge roll.
Correct.
Because this army also doesn't advance and charge.
No.
So you don't need to reroll your advance and reroll your charge. It's reroll your advance or reroll your charge. It's so bad.
It should be 20 or 25 points, and you just get all 3 all game. That's it.
Yeah, 15 would probably be aight. How much would you pay for an enhancement to reroll your charge roll? So which is basically what this is.
That's fair. That is fair. Yeah. All right, moving on. Blazing Icon for 20 points. Enemy units cannot use Fire Overwatch to shoot at the bearer's unit. Very cute, but I still find myself scratching my head whether I 100% want this. But in the Guard world, this is good because, oh no, I had to use a unit of Sanguinary Guard on an objective out of line of sight. And then they just dropped a preventative unit of Scions to stop me from even twitching with that unit. Because if I twitch, I die. So this feels like it would come up. It feels like it would be useful. But how do you feel about it?
If you have 20 points free and you don't have anything else you want to do with your list with those 20 points, then take it.
Yeah.
It's generally Sanguinary Guard are either durable enough that your opponent doesn't want to overwatch you, or you can get to an angle to charge to where your opponent can't see you or can't see with enough of their unit to make it worth it. So a couple of those strategies can get you to the point where your opponent isn't going to use Overwatch on you. It's also not impossible that there's only one time in the game where your opponent is going to be overwatching you relevantly, and the unit with Blazing Icon just isn't the one in that position. That being said, if you have 20 points, you don't have anything else you want to do with it, it's not bad. Like it will come up probably once a tournament, and that's fine.
Yep. Ornate Sacrifices is the last one for 25 points, which I quite like. It's very I like this a lot. The first time the bear is destroyed, 2+ get back up on death. As close as possible with 3 wounds remaining to where it was deaded. For 25 points, absolute freaking banger.
Yeah, this one's a banger.
Who's the best caddy for this?
By far the best. So I'm going to walk you through my thought process while I was writing lists for this. So first I was like, 25 points, I'll slap it on a jump captain so that I go clear an objective. My opponent shoots me. I stand back up on the objective. Woohoo, I score it sometimes.
Yeah, and then go off and clear another objective. Yeah.
Yeah, or I get to charge around and do stuff. Okay, cool. That's not terrible. I then thought about putting on a Judiciar, so he'd fight first, but then he doesn't fight first if he's not leading a unit, so that idea went away. And then I thought, what if I give it to a Death Company captain? And then he runs in, he dies, he blasts your opponent with mortal wounds for them having the temerity of them killing him. And then they charge him, they have to kill him again because he stood back up, and they take another blast to mortal wounds. That's pretty decent.
That is.
I was like, I don't really want to do that because he's OC0, and standing back up is really at its best when you're taking objectives away.
Yeah. Correct. It's a primary flip.
I don't know if I want any of these enhancements. They're not that good. And then I came up with the idea, and by far the best caddy for this, and it's not close, is the combi weapon lieutenant.
Yes, agreed. I saw using this at LVO, and I was like, that's the only home. That is.
Yeah, that guy made people unhappy. Let me put it this way. I played 35 games with this army, roughly in that vicinity, and I've played a lot of them against very good players. Nobody, and I mean not once, has come up with a good answer to that model.
Well, because he's loan up as well, right? He's loan up with a reactive move with a feel no pain, gets back up on death. This is like the ultimate package of BS.
Yep. So that what happens is I don't care where my opponent is. I don't care where their models are or where they're positioned. I take this dude, I slap him on the center objective. They can be 6 inches away. I do not care. Okay? Slap him on the center objective. Your opponent is left with 3 decisions. Well, a decision between three options. 1, they stay more than 12 inches away, in which case they don't lose any units, but you score the center objective. That's untenable. They can't let that happen. Okay. The other option is they step onto the objective to take it away from you, in which case he has his datasheet flat 6 reactive move, and he just runs behind a wall. So your opponent has revealed a unit, and he leaves and does not use his second life, so he still has it. On your turn, you shoot the thing that came in the center, you kill it,
back out.
and you put him back out.
Yep.
That's also bad because they're just bleeding a resource every single turn for no value.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what if I stay 9 inches away and shoot him, right? I get within 12, stay more than 9, and I shoot him. Okay, so he dies. Maybe. He probably does, but he is stealthy with a 5-0 feel no pain, so like it has happened where people don't kill him. Then he stands back up, so I score the center objective, and I picked up the resource that they poked forward.
Correct.
And they then have to deal with him again, which means I then pick up a second unit that they put forward.
I adore it. I think it is freaking incredibly good. And so frustrating, dude. So annoying. I mean, the only unit that I think there's comparable to it was the old Autark with the fusion gun and the wings that was loan up.
That was the inspiration for it.
With the Phoenix Gem. That was pretty much the same problem. Yeah. All right,
that dude. You just slap him on the center, and then you just get a bunch of points out of him, and he does secondaries, and he can throw a grenade if you're having trouble finishing the thing off on the center.
Correct.
And he has a Devlin gun. And in this detachment, he doesn't have bad combat because he has 5 attacks, re-rolling to hit, sustained hits, and then you can give him Lance if absolutely necessary. And he re-rolls ones to wound. He's AP1 now.
I think he's a gem. I think it's absolute gem.
One of the best parts of the list for sure.
The only thing I don't love is that his pointed an objective and get reroll ones is a bit of a nombo with your character units, but you can still get it on your Vindies and stuff like that. So
no, I forgot to mention that the Vindies love that.
Yeah, correct.
Just you put on whichever objective you think they're going to be staring at. Oftentimes the center. And so if they put something on the center objective to take it away from him, the Vindies just blow them into another dimension because you oath it, reroll ones to wound. Bye-bye. Get out of here.
All right, jumping into the stratagems, first of which is Armor Contempt. So moving on. Next is Focused Fury for 1 CP in the fight phase. 1, depth of status unit from your army has been selected to fight. To the end of the phase, melee weapons equipped by models in your unit have the lethal hits ability. If your unit is a character unit until the end of the phase, they have the lance ability as well. 1 CP lethals and lance is an incredible 1 CP stratagem.
Yeah. Well, we're just going to start off with a better version of one of Liberator's better stratagems.
Correct.
Yeah, because they have to decide if they want to battle shock themselves if they want both halves. You don't. You just have to be a unit that wants to be in this detachment.
Yeah,
Ace.
Exactly right. So good. So good.
It's great.
Next
it's
up
exactly
is
what this detachment needs.
I totally agree. Instant of Grace. Sorry, and the biggest thing about that is that because you're going to be most likely be taking, decent sized units of Sanguinary Guard and stuff like that, they actually have a little bit of a strength problem at times.
They do. They're strength 6 base, strength 7 on the charge with a captain attached.
Yep.
And then with strength 7 and +1 to wound, you will wound every single model in the relevant game on 4s. And with lethal hits and rerolls means that they will carve vehicles apart.
Exactly right. Whereas I have seen them legitimately, like I've seen people put full Dante packs of Sanguinary Guard into a Hecaton and just bounce straight off.
Yeah, I did not have problems cutting through Hecaton land forts.
All right, Instant of Grace for 1 CP. Your command phase, 1 adeptus status infantry unit from your army. Select 1 non-character model in your unit. Until the start of command phase, that guy's a character. While in effect, this is a designer's note, while in effect your model's unit is therefore a character unit, meaning it can interact with the legacy of the Angel Detachment rule in addition to other rules that interact with character units. So 1 CP, you can make a unit that doesn't have a character in it, a character unit. I like this a lot because one of the great ways to get to actually do nonsense to Angelic Inheritors is via the precision rule. Is to just go in and try and precision out their characters, and then all of a sudden they're just kind of wet noodly. So this is a great way of being like 1 CP, lol, you actually accomplished nothing, you're dead.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. To be honest with you, I have not had a single person precision out my characters.
Really? There you go.
Because they're just MSU units, so a lot of it's better just to put that damage into the squad. This would be nice if they even try to do it, and it's a great way to dissuade them. In addition, it's just a good way to make a unit hit harder, right? You have like a unit of Reavers or something. You're like, you reroll ones, reroll ones, and fall back, shoot and charge. Yeah, it's great. I have a unit of 6 Plasma Inceptors in my list, largely to shore up the hole into 3 wound infantry models that the list kind of has. And this is great because it essentially reads 1 CP, fallback, shoot and charge, and reroll ones to hit. Because they're already.
I know, dude. If you look at it like that, it's like even if it was just 1 CP, reroll ones to hit and wound, you're like, that's a great CP. That's a fantastic
CP.
Yeah.
It's good if the Inceptors are not receiving Oath against their target. So a lot of the time when you are overloaded, right? The Vindicators have to shoot one thing, the Inceptors have to shoot another, and then you have to charge into a bunch. You just throw Instant of Grace up on the Inceptors, and then the Vindicators get Oath, and everything has rerolls. Like every single unit you're activating has rerolls, and it's really
wild.
Good.
All right, so 1 CP strike now for Glory. It's in your shooting phase. 1 Dipstar's unit from your army hasn't shot. And to the end of the phase, range of weapons, equipment, models in your unit have sustained hits 1. Lol, Plasma Inceptors. Love this.
Pretty good on Plasma Inceptors. You know where I'm gonna talk about my secret unit here. It's not really secret anymore. I took it to LVO, but this is at its best on las cannon Devastators.
Yes, this was your literal secret sauce.
This was my secret sauce. It's great if there is a long firing angle on the board. So something like layout 6, layout 4, layout 1, layout 2 are all really good for it from GW. And what you do is you post the unit up in the top left-hand corner where you can see down the top of the board and across the board, basically. And that unit just sits there. The next stratagem is a lone op 18 strat. We'll cover that in a second. That really helps the unit as well. But sustained hits is great because they can flip a hit roll to a 6 once a game. So a lot of the time I'll spend sustained hits on them. I'll shoot. I'll roll 4 shots. There's a character attached to the unit, so they're rerolling ones to hit and ones to wound, and they're heavy, so they're hitting on 3s. And they ignore cover if they stand still. So as long as you can post up in an angle where you know your opponent's going to have to come out, you 4 shots, hitting on 3s, roll 1s. You're going to roll a natural 6 a lot of the time. So oftentimes you get 3 hits, one of which is a 6. You then flip the last one to a 6, and it's 4 shots, 6 hits on Laskins that then wound on 3s, roll 1s. And it's super reliable at doming tanks and that sort of thing.
I like it a lot, man. What I really like it is so it's not so much of an issue now, but so back when you were running this, I was like, oh, okay, I like Angelic Inheritors a lot, but when it runs into guard that have like double tank commanders and whatnot, the only recourse they have is to run up and charge them, because if you get into a Vindicator firefight with tank commanders, a lot of time the Vindies lose, or if they lose, at least they 1-for-1 trade when the tank commander shoots on death, and so that's not great. This is just that's just a fantastic little tool you built in there to help those matchups up. I think it was a genius idea.
Because if they poke the tanks into the middle of the board, a lot of the time they'll just die, which
exactly
helps a lot. Helps a lot. It's also, as you pointed out, amazing on the Plasma Inceptors. You drop down. There's some unit in your opponent's army that needs to go to sleep, whether it's like Possessed or Death Shroud Terminators were the unit that really got me to put it in. You drop down. You go 12 shots, rerolling to hit, sustained hits, 14 hits, twin linked, and then every failed save is a dead dude. And you'll just scoop a squad of 6 Death Shroud Terminators. It really helps in Deathwing Knights as well, because, hey, guess what? You -1 damage, I don't really care.
Exactly.
And then you get the Deathwing Knights down to the point where Sanguinary Guard can just win a 1v1.
Exactly right. Because, 5v4, because it's going to be 3 Sangard and a character, the Deathwing Knights usually win that. But if it's 3v4 or even 4v4, like you actually have a great chance hitting first.
Would actually be as surprised as I was when I found out that Sanguinary Guard tend to win the 1v1 against Deathwing Knights.
Really? With 3 with a character versus 5 Deathwing Knights?
Yes, they tend to win the 1 unit versus 1 unit off. I mean, I'll explain now why that is, because I was pretty surprised when I found that out as well. But
you wouldn't think it,
you wouldn't think it at all. But Sanguinary Guard are AP3, and this will be a huge factor. And then you're re-rolling to hit and to wound functionally. If you're on the charge, which you almost always will get, you're +1 to wound as well from the stratagem.
Yeah.
So you're going in, and they're not going to armor contempt just the captain, or Dante, they don't get to his AP3. So with Dante, for example, you run in, and it's 20 attacks, 20 wounds almost all the time. It's like 2-ups re-rolling, 2-ups re-rolling.
Yeah.
And then they take those, and they lose 2.5 guys, and they swing back, and they're -1 to hit, and they're -1 to wound.
Yeah.
And they're armor contempted, and they oftentimes don't even kill a guy.
Yeah, because they're AP2 damage, like so they're 6/2/2 into you essentially, and you can AOC to take 3-ups, and then gonna be hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s rather than 3s. Yeah, it does get much more awkward for them. Of course, you have to be on the charge.
Awkward.
Yeah, you have to be on the charge.
Yeah.
But
if they're on the charge, it gets a little nastier, but I have won combats where they've charged me first too.
That's exciting. That's really exciting.
It is. And you also don't require oath at any point in there.
Yeah, no.
The only defensive mechanic they have is -1 damage, which is nasty. But you have 3. You have armor of contempt, you have -1 to hit, and -1 to wound.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, those tend to actually just win out. And you also have your own native rerolls, and they don't. They need oath if they want to try and do anything.
All right, In the Shadow of Great Wings is up next for 1 CP. It's in your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. 1 attempted to start his character unit from your army that was selected as target of one or more of those attacking units' attacks. At the end of the phase, you get loan up 18. Ooh,
Really good. Really
so good. I mean, why can't we join a character to Unit of Inceptors? Why? Because that's everything I want for this detachment. Because suffice to say, you're actually kind of strangled on shooting units that have appropriate characters. You found one of the only ones, and it was a really weird, it was an unconventional thinking line that got you there.
Yes, I was looking for units that could be joined, infantry units basically, that have relevant long-range shooting to take advantage of this.
Hellblasters are 24. Yeah, exactly. Eradicators, too short range to be viable.
Yeah, you can make it work, but it's awkward. It's really odd.
If you were using them, you have to use them so perfectly.
And that's just not really going to happen when you're up against good players. They're also going to be doing things well. So I looked at it, I was like, wow, the only relevant unit I can find is Devastators. And this strat and the sustained hit strat makes them relevant where they've never been relevant this edition.
Yeah, I agree.
In addition, something that's fun is, hey, guess what? Let's say you made the, Inceptor unit a character because you wanted the rerolls and you dropped them down. Well, now you can loan up them on a future turn.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, on the following turn, you can loan up them if you want.
Yeah.
It's CP intensive. You won't do this often, but you can do it.
Yeah, the Inceptors will have to be on the board in your command phase though, so they can't really do it off the board. They come on because they have to be in their command phase to become a character. So yeah, it gets another level of awkward.
You can target them when they're off the board.
Oh really?
Yeah, you can't target them if they're in a transport, but you can target with strats. It just says select 1 infantry unit from your army. You pick the unit in reserves, they drop in, they shoot.
Yep.
And then you have the option to loan up 18 them if you want. It's CP intensive, you don't do it often, but it is an option. The stupidest thing I've ever used this on was I played into Bridgehead, and he had a bunch of mortars and some other indirect battery or something, and he was just shooting my infiltrators. And my infiltrators got knocked down to 2 models. And so on my turn, I was like, I have a lot of CP. We're playing a waiting game. Right, I do not want you to get rid of my infiltrators. So I 1 CP made them a character, and on his turn, 1 CP made him not shoot them.
Dude, hot. I hate that.
It was very cute.
All right, last strat onto the Burning Skies. 1 CP, end your opponent's fight phase. A jump pack unit from your army that is not within engagement range, unless it's a Sanguinor. Chuck them back in reserve. Now, we're gonna talk about the Sanguinor a lot in part 2, but I remember a couple of months ago when, it might have even been a year ago, I was telling Blood Angels people to deploy their Sanguinor. If you took the Sanguinor and you're playing a good player, deploy the Sanguinor. Just play him as the 8 wound, loan up, 2 up, 4 up craziness that he is, and then find ways and armies and stuff that you chuck him back into reserve to hold the sort of Damocles for later in the game, because good players are not going to let you get a premium Sanguinor play turns 1, 2, 3. Turn 2 and 3.
Yeah, you have to definitely make them do it. because otherwise they don't want to. And then that might put you in a position you don't want to be. So I use this strat constantly. It's
100%.
great because I have my standard play, right, is I spread out my Sanguinary Guard across my deployment zone. And like I take turn one where I just like slap my dude on the objective and move some guys around and stage and whatnot. And then my opponent takes their turn. And at the end of their turn, I just free strat send one of my captain squads up into the sky, right? 3 Sanguinary Guard plus a captain is a super efficient unit. And I just send it back into the sky. And on the following turn, I'll free strat rapid ingress it as well, because it's a full turn later. That's just like standard for how I play the game. It's like turn one, a lot of the time I'll just send one of them into the sky for free. And that's super good. The Sanguinor, weirdly enough, will never use it while it's in engagement range, ever. The Sanguinor is like the best part of this detachment. It's close, but it's not like that close. Because he gets reroll ones to hit and wound, which means if you've ever played the Sanguinor in like Liberators or whatever, you know that dude drops down and rolls 5 hits, 3 wounds, and doesn't kill anything. It's just what he does.
Dude.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah, correct. I had somebody like explain what the Sanguinor does to me. Of course, I was playing 15 Deathwing Knights at the time, and I was like, I don't give one crap about the Sanguinor. I'm not changing my play pattern at all. Unga and or Bunga Sir push. And he came in, did not kill a Deathwing Knight, and died. And then from then on, I was like, everyone deploy your Sanguinor. Deploy the Sanguinor, everybody. Loan up, get some primary, get some juice from the squeeze from that boy.
He won't kill a Deathwing Knight. Even with rerolls,
this ain't his meta. And that was the Deathwing Knight heyday.
Yeah, for sure. So the Sanguinor is amazing with reroll 1 hit and wound. He will reliably snipe characters out of units if you spend for precision. He will reliably gut like jump pack intercessors if your opponent charges you with them. Correct. He'll reliably gut like legionaries if they charge you with those. He'll kill, Death Guard infantry really, really well. Plague Marines go to sleep if he touches them. Because it's just Plague Marines. 2s reroll 1s, 3s reroll 1s, dev wounds, you get 6 ups, bye-bye, be gone.
Yeah.
He's really, really good at that.
He's also a great target for the 1 CP precision strat. He doesn't have precision built in, does he?
He does not have precision built in. You have to spend for it, but half the time he will, basically.
Yeah, he's a great there, especially against like people who are about to go Super Saiyan with their Chaos Lords and stuff like that. He just drops in, ices them before they strike. That's going to be like 3/4 of the damage coming out of 5-man chosen and legionary units and stuff like that.
Yep, he's very good at killing that sort of stuff. He's great at picking out units or characters that give fight first.
Yep.
He's really good at that because he also fights first, by the way. So he drops in, fights before they do. It's gnarly. The best use of him I've ever had is like my opponent charged me with Plague Marines with the 2 standard characters, the Putrefier and the Fight Just guy. Yeah. And I just stabbed his fight first character to death. And then Dante's squad on the following turn just came in and wiped the entire unit. Amazing. And he, by the way, because he can fall back, shoot, and charge, the Sanguinor came in, killed the character, and then just left. He just left and went and fought and killed some other stuff.
Because, you had to go into your turn.
The unit into the sun. A lot of the time, your opponent needs to charge you in order to win skirmish fights, and the Sanguinor just ends that. If they have to charge onto your objective with Reavers or something, and the Sanguinor just drops down, murders all the Reavers, and then goes and hits their home objective, it's catastrophic. You get an extra point at 5 points. You picked up a resource that's relevant, and now the Sanguinor is inside their army at the start of my turn. That's not what they want.
Not tenable.
And this is a really good sword of Damocles, as you pointed out, to hold over your opponent.
Correct.
And you want to be able to do that. So if your opponent has to charge you at some point during the game to win the game, right? That's usually my metric. If they want to try to win the game, they have to charge me at some point with a unit the Sanguinor wants to drop on. I will deploy him on the board and turn 1, send him into the sky.
Yep.
If you don't do this, what's going to happen, especially if you're going first, it gets really unpleasant because turn 1, he can't come in. Turn 2, he can come in, but that's like your one turn to do it. Because turn 3, you either have to drop him on your turn or go into your opponent's turn. If it's in your opponent's turn, your decision is between rapid ingressing, which feels awful because you're spending the CP anyway and you're getting a lot less value out of it, or you have to wait for your opponent to charge. And if your opponent decides not to charge that turn, the Sanguinor dies in reserves. And that feels terrible. You have to make a decision that sucks. Do I bring him in on top of 3 and for like no value? Do I bring him in during my opponent's turn 3 for no value? No. If he starts on the board turn 1 and your opponent's turn, first off, if your opponent charges you turn 1, he's there to heroic and whatnot,
Correct.
which has come up.
Yeah.
And second off, if you send him into the sky on turn 1, he has been on the board already. He does not have to come in on turn 3,
Correct.
which is huge. Because a lot of the time he won't drop on turn 4, right? Your opponent won't charge you on turn 4.
Yeah.
But it means your opponent's going to charge you on turn 2 or turn 3 because they know that there is no time limit. They can't outweight him. They have to go through him.
Look at this Jack Harpster Sanguinor TED Talk that we should have been putting in part 2. Continue, mate. Sorry.
No, that's about the end of it. He's just an absurd unit in this detachment in a way that I thought he was before I saw this detachment, but he just needs rerolls, man. He just needs rerolls.
Exactly right, dude. And he actually really, really did not like -1 to hit as well. I've had him come in.
He likes it significantly more. The other thing I've been seeing online a lot is people think that what you do is you drop them on your opponent, you hit them first, and then end of their fight phase, you send them back into the sky. You do not do this. Don't do that. That's his ability to drop out of the sky and fight first does not re-rack. It's once a game.
Correct.
It doesn't matter if you return him into reserves. It's once a game.
Best thing you're going to be able to do is like, ingress him later in the game and try and go pressure a flank or something. Just leave him on the board, fall back in charge, go and mess around with their plans.
But the best part of the Sanguinor isn't even the turn he drops on your opponent. It's the turn after. Yes. He drops in, guts a unit, keeps one of your units safe, kills something, prevents them from taking your primary away. It's great. And then the turn after, he just goes and takes their home objective, or goes and takes their expansion, or goes and murders a unit, or goes and kills something, ties up a unit in the middle of their army. It gets really nasty. I mean, when you have the Sanguinor in the sky, they basically can't charge anything that's within 18 to 24 inches of their home objective, because you'll just drop the Sanguinor, punch, and go take their home. If we're saving any Sanguinor specific tactic stuff,
no, it's fine. There's plenty of juice. Don't even worry about it. Keep going.
Okay, so the last part of this is a lot of people assume you drop the Sanguinor, hit, and then the Sanguinor will die if you don't wipe the unit. That, again, should never happen if you drop him right. Here is what his rule does not say is drop him in base to base with your opponent. People just do that for some reason. They assume that they should or something. He also drops at the end of the fight phase or the end of the charge phase. So your opponent doesn't get to charge, bait you out, and then attempt to charge you with a second unit. You wait until they're all done, then you drop him. So what you do is you find a model that is not great at hurting him by itself. Whatever that is. Maybe there's a dude in the unit who has a rifle. Maybe they won't kill him if only one of their models fights him or whatever. And you drop exactly 1 inch away from that model in the opposite direction of the unit they were trying to engage in the first place. What this means is nobody can go backwards to you, and certainly nobody can move to get in base with that model if it does go backwards to you, right? So even if the model you are in engage range of can go to you, none of the rest of the squad can get in base with that model because they have to, they're already in base with your unit, right? And you can just select a model that's already in base. Let's pretend you have a Rhino or something, right? And you're a Vindicator. This is what actually came up when I fought the Death Guard unit. You have a Vindicator. They charge the Vindicator. They have to base it. So they string out all the way around the Vindicator. They can be in base to base with each other. It doesn't particularly matter. What you do is you find one model that is in base with the Vindicator, and you drop 1 inch away from it in a direction where nobody can pile into the Sanguinor. This is very easy to find. This should just happen every time you drop them, basically. And then when they swing, only one model can hit you back. It doesn't matter if they're all in base with each other. You stay 1 inch away, so only one model can fight.
Well, the biggest thing I'll say about the Sanguinor is that for 140 points, there are very few cheaper things in the game that cause your opponent to play completely differently if you didn't have it. It's like the cheapest thing you can put into your cheapest thing you can put into almost any army that completely changes how your opponent has to play.
Yeah, he just makes one fight go very badly for your opponent, which if they're charging like something small, right? If they're charging like your infiltrators, that's one thing, right? You get 5 extra primary, you introduce the Sanguinor into the center of their army. Great. If they're trying to kill Sanguinary Guard, that's where it gets a lot worse. So, for example, the last game I played with this was this week. Maybe it was last week? Last week. Point being, my opponent was playing Ynnari. He charged my Sanguinary Guard that were staged up. He charged them with 5 Howling Banshees and an Autarch and 5 Incubi and an Archon. Okay?
It's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff. So I dropped down to Sanguinor and picked up all the Banshees. Just all of them. Just they're all gone.
Hot.
It's great. You love it. You love it. And so what that meant was then he swung on the Sanguinary Guard. And he, at that point, with -1 to hit, -1 to wound, did not have the juice to get through an Armor of Contempted Sanguinary Guard squad. He just killed 2 models.
Yep.
Which, about average, right? Because the Archon Incubi package is, hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s, rerolling 1s on both, but, and then it's AP2. So even though the Archon's anti-infantry, it still isn't that great. Yeah, the point being, he wounded a guy with the Incubi unit, and he killed 2 with the Autarch. So now I have 2 guys. Wow. And so those 2 guys then flipped him in combat, killed him, took the objective. So he lost both of his units in exchange for 2 models. So as I said, and then because that unit is still there, it jumped in further and picked up a 3rd unit. Right? Yep. And then the Sanguinor gets to jump in and pick up a 4th unit.
Correct. So it just creates like a cascading effect, like a snowball effect of bad to worse. And that's what you're holding over your opponent. That is that sword of Damocles. But we're gonna have to wrap up this part 1. We will continue this conversation over on part 2. But we got to do our rating system before we tune out, my man. All right. As a Blood Angels player, and speaking on behalf of all Blood Angels players, how happy are you with this detachment out of 10?
I would say a solid 9, 9.5. Very happy with it. It's probably the most fun detachment to workshop and play with that I've played so far in like 10th. Some of the I think some of the abilities could be like a little. Yeah, but what am I even asking for, man? This detachment's great. 10.
It's great. No. Yeah, fair enough. Totally fair. Can't disagree. And on the competitive tier list, where would you put an amazing Blood Angels player with this detachment? Where would they rate?
A tier. High A tier, I'd say.
Yep, totally agree. I don't think they're A+, but they're probably one of the highest A tier armies in the game. I have a weird existence for A+ armies at the moment, where I think there's like maybe 1 in the game, because of course we've got Sisters and GSC. Lol, no, it's we got Marines and Guard, and then possibly Eldar, and we're gonna have to kind of rethink our grading system after that, because I've got a feeling Eldar is going to push Marines into A+ out of S.
Yeah, I think Ynnari and Guard are very good, and then Marines are like the 3rd, probably. Yeah, and I think this is one of the better Marine builds if you really know what you're doing.
Yeah, totally agree. Of course, we're talking about Vanilla Astarte with the +1 to wound, predominantly, and we're talking about this one as a true Blood Angels faction that takes Blood Angels units. So,
and I will make my case in part 2 as to why I think that it is better to have Blood Angels units than go for that +1 to wound. I actually think the +1 to wound is a trap.
I 100% agree. I even told this to Innez to his face. I said, "Your Desos are cute, mate, but was it worth it? What did it cost?" And he did the Thanos thing where he said everything. Anyway,
it costs him taking good units, but yeah.
Anyway, we are out of here. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Stay tuned for our next segment. Not sure who's coming up next. Could be either Kyle Grundy, could be Dean Sinnbeck, or could be the delightful. Who else would I have coming on? Someone else. I'm sure there's other people coming on this show. Yeah, Dean, Kyle, and Innez. That's right. All right. Sit tight, enjoy, go to part 2. See you there. Love you, Jack. G'day, my lovelies, and welcome back to another segment for the last. This is the ironic one that I saved this detachment for the last week. I'll be doing Grotmas reviews because I'm freaking done with this. And you should all know by now that we do have an Emperor's Children Codex that was just announced that's going up for pre-order next weekend. So you can assume that is what next week's show is going to be. But It's the final day, baby. It's the final day of Grotmas reviews, and to that end, we're reviewing the final day. And to that end, I've got Innez freaking Wilson on the show. Hello, mate.
Hello, Adam. Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here for the final episode talking about Final Day. Well timed.
Indeed. Dude, it took me to into the last week of February. They started doing these things in December, and it's taken me like 3 freaking months to
See,
review
that's what you get
Grotmas.
for being that's what you get for being thorough with your reviews. You don't just throw up reactionary hot takes day one and abandon them like the rest of us.
Just scattershot off takes off into the crowd.
Exactly.
This one's good.
Tweak
This
it
one
easily
sucks.
right, and that's all people remember.
Dang. Yeah, that's it. But anyway, yeah, I do try. I'm still going to be able to do them all, and I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I've made my peace with it. I just have bigger and brighter things I want to be doing with my show than in perpetuity reviewing Grotmas. But mate, did you come second or third at LV in the ITC last year?
I finished second. I'm the best non-Games Workshop employee singles player in the world officially right now. And that's the moniker I'm going with, and I'm sticking with it.
I like it. I like it a lot. So, all right. I'll give you a chance to plug your wares at the end, but we're going to jump in and review this final day. I do like the fluff. I like the fluff of Final Day. Final Day, if anybody doesn't know, is the detachment lets you take GSC and Tyranids. Essentially, it's forces of the hive mind, the detachment. And it lets them operate in some interesting little ways. What are your hot takes on this detachment, my dude?
My hot takes on this is that I'm really glad it gives you access to like a bunch of different Tyranid things. It'd be really easy for it to just be like, hey, you could play all of Tyranids and be like very ill thought out. But the fact that you get the Vanguard stuff, and Vanguard's a keyword that we can play about with a little bit in the future. We've already seen a couple changes to it, and you get some of it that doesn't include Biovores. Because God, if GSC had Biovores, I think nobody needs that. Nobody wants that.
No.
That shouldn't happen. So yeah, top level take is super cool to detachment thematically. It hurts my soul. I love both of these armies. It hurts my soul to think of the Gene Circles dying. Like that's not their job. That's the opponent's job. But it's really cool to have it all be like integrated, and it feels like it works as an army pretty well together. There's a little bit of like lack of cross buff synergy, right? Of course, with any two codexes, but the detachment does a really good job of cleaning it up. It's just always like you're sitting there like, oh yeah, plus 1 AP for everything except that half of my army is always a little weird. Because you get into like that deep weeds of, is this a debuff on you or a buff for my stuff? How does this work? Because there's all that stuff where is this a Tyranid buff for Tyranid units, or is it remove cover from your unit, right? Like there's all that kind of stuff. It puts a bit of memory tracking on it that isn't always there for some of these armies. But I think for a Grotmas detachment, that's okay, right? This is if you think of them as like the expert level detachments for more invested players, right? The people who are willing to go and look on the website and actually track what's going on in the game a little more. It's fine for them to be a bit more involved, a bit more detailed than
for sure
your standard invasion fleets.
All right, jumping in. So I'm going to be reading the things. You're going to be telling us the hot stuff. Psionic Parasitism rule is the detachment rule. At the end of your movement phase for each Tyranid synapse unit from your army, you can select one friendly Gene Stealer occult unit, excluding Pure Strain Gene Stealers and Patriarch units, and one friendly Tyranids unit, each within 9 and visible to that synapse unit. If you do, the Gene Stealer cult unit from your army suffers D3 plus 1 mortal wounds, and one model in the selected Tyranids unit regains up to that many lost wounds. And until the start of your next movement phase, each time a model in the selected Tyranids unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. Tyranid units from your army have the following ability. While an enemy unit is within 6 of this unit, each time a friendly Gene Stealer cult unit makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, add 1 to the hit roll. And then, of course, you can include Tyranid's Vanguard Invader units, excluding Aircraft, Broodlord, and Gene Stealer units in your army. The combined points cost of such units it can be up to 1,000 points in a 2,000 point game. And no Tyranids model from your army can be your warlord. I see what you mean. Like, I was very aware of what you were talking about when you were saying, like, okay, well, this is kind of orc-like. My leader beast is going to punch these dudes to benefit these dudes. But I kind of, in this matchup, I wanted the Gene Stealer cult units more than I need these guys. So I don't have an army rule versus you.
It never really feels like that, because so you could almost read this detachment rule as just the last paragraph of your Tyranid units have a 6-inch aura of, if an enemy unit's within 6 of that Tyranid unit, your Gene Stealer cult stuff has +1 to hit against it. The like parasite part of it, where you pick your synapse unit picks a Gene Stealer unit and a friendly Tyranid unit, both within 9 of the synapse unit, and the synapse unit can transfer wounds from the Gene Stealer unit to the synapse, to the any Tyranid unit, but you have to have a synapse unit as like a conduit for that. So it puts a little bit of like man, sit-ups units kind of suck. Especially,
Mm,
it's worth remembering that the balance data slate change for Synapse does not apply in this attachment. You are not playing Tyranids, you do not have the Synapse ability.
correct. So no plus
That's a
strength.
Tyranid army ability, right? So
Yeah.
you don't get the plus strength. You also notably don't get the 3d6 leadership check, which means that this army is very Battleshock vulnerable. Gargoyles are leadership 8. Man, does that hurt sometimes when they're
Oof.
holding primary. Just like a general like awareness thing. There are some really cool like little use cases with it. The most interesting one is because of the way that Gene Cult units have the cult icons, the things that bring back models, you
Mm.
can pre-trigger that a little bit with this. So you can, I'm going to use my Parasite of Mortrex to sap some wounds out of my Neophyte squad. That will result in my Neophyte squad losing D3+1 models because it takes D3+1 more wounds. And then when it comes around to my next command phase, I will bring them back with the cult icon, and I could potentially, regrow them onto an objective or closer to
Yep.
CU,
Yep.
or in a line that I couldn't access it, and that's kind of cool. It has like that delayed gratification thing. You do it one command, end of one movement phase, and then it triggers at the beginning of your next one. It's a long time to wait between rules, and remembering that that's mattered, and having it come up. But it's cool that it's there. The plus one to hit on Tyranid units then becomes pretty situational. Like you have to do damage to yourself. The units you're buffing generally don't tend to be particularly amazing. Vanguard Tyranid units are not known for their insane weapon skill.
Correct.
Like you're hitting with things like Trigons that hit on 3s but are unlikely to be near Synapse creatures, or you've got like Tyranid warriors that hit on 3s, but if you're going to give them a wing Tyranid prime, they hit on 6s, but like you can't run Tyranid warriors at the second, right? So you're restricted to things like Raveners, or Von Ryan's Leapers, all of which are kind of they're volume attack units, right? These are guys coming in with like strength 6 AP1 attacks, maybe with Twin Link.
Yeah. Yeah.
Giving them plus one to hit isn't super impactful. But the other side of this, the plus one to hit, like for Tyranid units, applying to the Gene Circle units is amazing. It is hands down the best part of this attachment. Plus one to hit is
100%.
effectively the same thing as the sustained hit that you have coming out of Host of Ascension. They're mathematically about the same plus one to hit versus sustained hits. But the plus one to hit applies in melee, and it applies more consistently, and it applies all the time. You don't need to have coming from reserve this turn. So when you have Gene Cult, which are traditionally a guardsman equivalent army, getting plus one to hit suddenly it really pushes that efficiency. You've got Ridge Runners, which suddenly hit on 2s with their spotters. You've got Aberrants in combat hitting on 2s. You've got Neophyte squads hitting on 4s and 3s, depending on which weapon is firing. The Benefactuses, which you can sometimes see 2 or 3 of in some Gene Cult lists, hitting on 2s. There's just a lot of really nice efficiency coming with that. You also got like the minor side of things with stuff like Gene Stealers don't love getting hit with -1 to hit, because that's a unit that relies on its volume and hitting on 2s to proc its devastating wounds ability. Every time a Patriarch rolls a 1 to hit, a puppy just like evaporates. And you're just like, oh, this is the worst day of my life. And whenever your opponent has lightning fast or something like that in an Eldar detachment, you just get to be like, no, that's not a thing. And then the most hilarious synergies, obviously, Gargoyles are probably one of the top 10 data sheets in the game, if we're being honest with ourselves,
100%.
and we don't evaluate damage output. And they have a fire and fade ability. They can shoot and move, which means that you can put this multiple places in the same turn with the same unit. Your gargoyles move, they advance, they stand next to something, you shoot it 2 bits. And then you shoot something else with the gargoyles, and then they move 6 inches next to where your combat units are charging, and they go in there as well, while denying primary and potentially scoring a secondary on the way through. And you're just like, man, gargoyles are the best, and you feel super smart. And
They
you're
really
like
are.
somebody who brought 3 squads of mortars and they all die turn 1. You're like, damn, I don't have an army rule.
Yeah, it sucks. All right, into the enhancements. Synaptic Auger, 15 points, Tyranids model only. Each time the bearer would regain 1 or more lost wounds from the detachment rule, it gains up to twice that number of lost wounds instead. So you would gain 2d3 plus 2 instead of d3 plus 1. But you still, would you sap 2d3 from the unit?
No, it's
or would
just
you only
the
sap
regain
d3?
wounds. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, that is good. But what's a Vanguard
You
model
have
that can take an enhancement?
options, I believe. You can run the Parasite of Mortrex, who only has 5 wounds and does not
It's
have
not.
models.
Yeah,
That's not
2d3 ain't good. It's dead. If it needs 2d3 back, it's already dead.
The Winged Tyranid Prime, which cannot have a unit that it joins besides Gargoyles, which is not what I would consider an amazing sort of joining an 85-point leader to, who has 6 wounds. Or you can do it on the Winged Tyranid Prime, which is obviously Winged Hive Tyrant, sorry, which is obviously the most compelling version of this.
Yeah.
But there's a much better enhancement for that coming 2 down.
Yeah.
And he's still not that good, unfortunately.
It's
that
almost
is. Yeah. Sorry, go for it.
We needed a Trigon Prime, baby. Trigon Prime, character Trigon. That's what we need. That's what
went to Legends. The big Legends in the sky. Yeah,
I
what we
know.
need is we get Rogaldorn tank commanders. Why can't I have Debakar on tank commanders? That's what we really need with
All
the
right.
Vanguard keywords.
Enraptured Damnation for 10 points. Gene Stealer Cult's model only. Enemy units can't fire Overwatch at the bearers unit.
Yep,
Not bad.
fantastic.
Not bad.
There are like 3 or 4 solid use cases for this. The ones that you mostly see are Metamorphs or Gene Stealers running around with this, just having no Overwatch. It's a great thing in a world of in a world of Landrider Redeemers and all of their ilk. It's nice to be a Squishy 2 and Gene Stealer running about completely unopposed.
I wonder if the Vanguard Tyrant one is the one that's meant to go on the Flying Hive Tyrant. 25 points. Oh, only Winged Hive Tyrant. Wow, really? They're really zeroing in on what this one is for. Improve the strength and arm penetration characteristics of the bearers melee weapons by 1.
Yep.
Nice. Very
you
nice.
get your Synapse back, kind of, and you get +1 AP, which puts the Winged Hive Tyrant to AP 3, meaning it almost feels like a melee data sheet with its 6 attacks.
Yeah.
It's the Winged Hive Tyrant is already too expensive. It's free CP, only works on Tyranid units, and as we'll see when we come to the Stratagem suite, none of the Tyranid ones are particularly amazing. They're like okay, but you're not getting a ton of value out of those 5 to 10 free CP that you're getting every game, like you would in a detachment like Invasion Fleet or Vanguard. The Tyrant is awkward and hard to hide and doesn't get advanced charges, etc. Which is a very poor combination for wanting this guy, unfortunately. But if you were going to run him, you would run him with this enhancement, I think.
Yeah. Inhuman Integration for 20 points. Last one, GSC model only. Weapons equipped by the models in the bearers unit have sustained hits 1 while targeting an enemy unit that is within 6 of 1 or more friendly Tyranid units. Quite good. I like it.
Yeah, this is a super solid enhancement. It goes very well on either a Primus unit or a it goes very well on a Aberrant unit with the Biophagus. It goes very well with a Benefictus with the lethal hits already. Just very solid enhancement, 20 points. Works on melee and range. I've not seen anybody trying to do this on like the bomb squads. Unfortunately, the bomb squads being only 8-inch range and not working from deep strike is quite disappointing.
Yes,
some of this because that'd be cool because that's a melee and shooting unit or a reasonable melee and shooting unit.
Yeah.
There's nothing else really like that in Gene Stealer Cult, unfortunately. So yeah, I've not. You usually see this on a shooting unit, right? It's the most compelling reason. Yeah, it's kind of a shame that Enraptured Damnation is so good because this would be great on Gene Stealers, but you're just delivering them is far more important than doing a bit more damage when you're there.
Exactly right. You would rather have your Gene Stealers there to actually fight than have half the unit make combat with sustain hits. All right, jumping into in order of precedence, in order of priority, how would you rate these enhancements? Like, what's the auto take here? What's the next best? What's the next best?
I think it would be foolish not to have Inhuman Integration and Enraptured Damnation. They are both very good.
Totally
even
agree.
In like the situations where you're just putting Enraptured Damnation on like a Reductus Saboteur that's running solo, or not that you would, or you're going to have some Gene Stealer Cult characters. They're very good. Put it on whatever you want that's going to go and play melee, right? There's really good melee detachment buffs in this detachment. You're going to have a Biophagus or an Abomin or a Patriarch that wants that somewhere, and Inhuman Integration is just a really, really good damage output buff. It would be odd not to want it. And they're only 30 points between them. Gene Stealer Cults and Tyranids are an army characterized by lots of low-cost interchangeable units. You can find 30 points somewhere to have these two genuinely game-changing interactions.
Beautiful. All right. First, the strats: Hyper Ferocity, fight phase, 1 CP, 1 Gene Stealer Cult unit from your army that's not been selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time model unit makes an attack that targets an enemy unit, reroll a wound roll of 1. If 1 or more friendly Tyranid units are within 6 of that enemy, you reroll the wound roll as well. Very spicy, very good. What are your best use cases here?
Yeah. So the best use cases for this are, there are like 3 really good ones for Gene Stealer Cult.
Exactly right.
One is the Gene Stealer Squad itself with the Patriarch. That unit has devastating wounds while it's being led. It's going to hit on 2s. If it's near an enemy territory, you can fish for those 6s, get your AP2 going up to AP3 with a Ridge Runner, and then you'll shred Magnus, you'll shred a lot of the Silent King, any of those like really big heavy hitting units that you don't want to have to work through the hard way. Just hit them with your Gene Stealers. They'll die. They will die. You're hitting on 2s. You might have sustained hits if you've not gone for Enraptured Damnation like a psychopath. You'll pick it up. It's very solid. The second use case is Aberrants. Aberrants are characterized mostly by a fairly poor strength characteristic. They are 7-2 in combat. And they have 3 attacks, which means that their volume is not incredible. And then the Abominant again is hitting on is 4 attacks. So once you've got that +1 to hit and the reroll wounds, suddenly hitting on 2s, wounding on 5s, you're rolling 3s, you're rolling with the Abominant into those bigger targets, and you start to feel those 5-man squads really, really doing work for the CP.
Correct.
It's not bad at all. And then the last one is kind of just like any of the generic Acolyte profile units. So that's Metamorphs or Acolytes with either auto pistols or hand flamers. The hand flamer would roll to wound on objective already, but not everybody's always on an objective. It's nice to be able to solve those problems occasionally. Metamorphs, again, have a ton of attack volume. They've got lethal hits already, potentially, but again, this is another good way to really jam the damage output up. And then Acolytes with melee weapons, it gives you their very low attack volume, 2 attacks per model. You've got to have 12 attacks in a squad of 10 coming out of those profiles, and they're going to be hitting on 3s, but suddenly you put them up to hitting on 2s because of the +1 to hit from Catalyst, and then wounding on 4s with full wound rerolls, and suddenly it's a 75% conversion rate. Your expected value goes from that unit being 8 hits, 4 wounds on a big vehicle to being 7.5. Right? You're expecting 7 or 8 wounds, which is now putting you to the threshold where if they're saving on 5s, you're expecting to do 15 damage. If they're saving on 4s, you're still expected to do a very, very significant chunk, and you can always boost that up with Ridge Runners if you really want to. It makes them like suddenly a Land Raider killing threat instead of a Rhino probably opening threat, which is a much nicer place to be for that kind of
Those two statements are not like each other.
I like Rhino, or I'm decently good odds to kill that Land Raider. Like I would much rather be the second kind for
correct, because the second kind can still do the first thing just fine. All right. Next of the stratagems, Psi Surge. This is 1 CP, start of any phase. 1 Tyranid unit from your army until the start of your next command phase. Increase the range of your unit's catalyst ability by 3. And each time you use this stratagem until the end of the next command phase, you cannot use this stratagem again. So this is a once per turn, once per battle round stratagem, essentially. Not bad though. It's not bad. I wouldn't say it's fantastic or
this is the one that when you're going, and that's when you're doing your pre-aim talk with your opponent, and you're like, so this is the stratagems, and I've got the reroll wounds, and I've got the gun, and I've got the like, and I know there's a 6th one. Let me go and look up what it is. That's the
fair.
It is definitely there. It is a thing that if you need it, it is nice to have. It is
a stratagem of all time.
A 1 CP +1 to hit stratagem when you need it to be, right? If it's going to be anything, it's a 1 CP +1 to hit stratagem that might affect multiple units. That is not a bad thing to have access to. However, it's one of those stratagems that you read it and you're like, yeah, but if I just like played better, I could probably do this anyway. A lot of the time. Which puts it in that situation of being like, yeah, you'll use it, but you'll never be like super jazzed about it.
Correct. All right, next up, Avenge the Star Children for 1 CP. Your opponent's shooting phase or the fight phase just after enemy unit has shot or fought. 1 Tyranid character unit from your army that was just destroyed by an enemy unit. This phase, you can use a strat despite them being destroyed. Until the end of the battle, each time a Gene Stealer Cult's model from your army makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, +1 to the hit roll and +1 to the wound roll. So you just have it perma slapped on them, and it's the wound roll here that you're really wanting more than anything else, because the hit roll you can get pretty easily on demand. How do you feel about it?
It's an okay stratagem. The biggest problem this stratagem has is that you don't actually want a ton of Tyranid characters. We ran through the Vanguard Tyranid characters that can have enhancements a little earlier with the Winged Tyrant Prime, the Winged Hive Tyrant, and the Parasite Mortrix, none of whom are particularly incredible. And the only other one I believe you have access to is Death Leaper. Now, Death Leaper's quite good. I don't want Death Leaper to die.
Correct.
Just at all. So, if he dies, this is a nice consolation prize, I guess. But I'd much rather Death Leaper was standing on my expansion objective until the end of the game rather than dying and giving me
exactly right.
Awesome to hit. Now, if he does die and something real killed him, you're not going to be upset, especially if it's something like a Keeper Secrets that's already -1 to hit. You get that +1 to hit from the Detachment and Catalyst and from this. Suddenly you're back to hitting on 4s. That's actually really quite nice. The +1 to wound is obviously money. But yeah, the lack of generally good Tyranid characters is really what puts not a damper, but makes this not as good as it would be in a detachment that's got a bit more easy and frequent access. I think if this was any character that died, you'd be like, hell yeah, we absolutely gaming. But that might be a little much when you've got 60-point lone operatives running around in Gene Circle. So I can see why it's not.
All right, next up we have Divine Imperative. This is 1 CP also in your charge phase. 1 Gene Stealer Cult unit from your army that is not selected not declared a charge. Select 1 enemy unit within engagement range of 1 or more enemy Tyranid units from your army. So Tyranids are already engaged in range of them. Until the end of the phase, each time a Gene Stealer Cult unit declares a charge, if that enemy unit that's engaged in range of that Tyranid unit is one of the targets of the charge, add 1 to the charge roll and re-roll charges. So a lot of terms and conditions for not too bad buff. And nothing to write home
You
about.
can pre-spend your command reroll and get +1 CP and get +1 to charge. I'm not
Correct.
complaining. It's
Nah.
completely fine.
It's fine.
It's the stratagem, like it pushes you to just about 70% to hit a charge from reserve if you want to play
Correct.
that way. It's still not my favorite place to spend CP charging from reserve, but if you need it, it's there and get out of jail free. It's very nice for like just getting a little further up the board. You know, you got like that 3-inch charge with your 20 neophytes that want to get on that objective. But if you roll a 10, you could sneak behind them and grab another unit and stuff like that. You know, you can chuck it on this and be like, right, it's now +1, so it's a 9 with a reroll. It's about a 50-50. Like, you can get some shenanigans out of this. It's fine. You will use it. You will. It's nice for like when you've got that short charge that you really can't have fail, but you don't want to spend your commander roll it because you're about to throw a bunch of 9-inch charges somewhere else. And you're like, I'm going to roll this one first because if I fail it, I'm going to be really feckin' mad.
The thing is, you've already made that charge though. You've already made that charge because the Tyranid unit's already in combat with that unit.
Yeah, I mean, like my gargoyles aren't doing anything aren't going to do anything in combat.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
It doesn't have to be a good Tyranid unit in combat.
Well, we already went through the Tyranid units that you get, and yeah, good is not the word that's screaming at me.
Ravagers are pretty fast.
They're
I'll
not.
give Ravagers some credit.
I will say there are some okay units and some pretty reasonable units.
We should
but
probably
on the whole,
the Vanguard Tyranid list is after this as well, just to kind of
correct. Darting attacks is up next for 1 CP, your shooting phase or the charge phase. Your charge phase rather. 1 Tyranid unit from your army until the end of the phase. Your unit is eligible to declare a charge and turn in which you fell back. So 1 CP, fall back and charge, totally fine. Totally acceptable.
Tyranid units, which is a shame. Genius Occult units would adore this. But that is not the life we live. So
all right. Last one, resistance tunnels. 1 CP, enter your opponent's fight phase, 1 Gene Steel Occult or Tyranid unit from your army that is not within engage or range of one of my enemy units. Remove them from the battlefield, place them back into strat reserve. Is this any good in this army?
It's the best stratagem in the detachment.
Yeah.
So is it weird to say that I think the only other Tyranid detachment that has this is I think there's a version of this in Brood Brothers Auxilia, which you don't play. So
no.
The fact that no other Tyranid detachment or no other Gene Occult detachment has this ability at all is bonkers to me, given that the index had it on 2 units a turn.
Correct.
It's so heartbreaking when you're playing like Host of Essentials, like, please shoot me so I can go back in reserve. Please shoot me so I can go back in reserve. This is the only attachment that just has it generically, and it also works on Tyranid units, which is genuinely really good. Almost everything in Gene Occult has deep strike. It's not restricted as well. You can use this on like Outlander Claw has this for vehicle units and mounted units. But it's strat reserve, and you have to be within 9 of the board edge, wholly within 9 of the board edge. This is unrestricted. You can use this on Ridge Runners that are in the middle of nowhere. You can use this on your 20 Brick of Neophytes. It gives you genuine turn 1 pressure if you go second, because you can lift up your Benefactus unit on turn 1 that has Inhuman integration and then drop it on your opponent and just start doing damage bright and early in the game. It is a very, very powerful stratagem that it's absolutely worth keeping an eye on. It's also notably, it's not worded like the Grey Knight's ability or the Callous Assassin, where it has to come down in the next turn. You are just going into strategic reserves, which means that you can, in theory, stay in reserve until the end of the game with this if you want to. This is one of the interesting use cases for the Tyranid Hive Tyrant, is that you could just like pick up a unit on turn 1 for free if you didn't need to use any other stratagems and just leave it there. Whether that's like, 10 gargoyles that are just going to sit and wait, and then the second your opponent's backfield opens up a little bit, you rapid anchor the gargoyles in and go and jam their home objective. But that could be on turn 3 or turn 4. You don't know when it's going to be. You want to keep some tools in reserve for that. You can pick up a Lictor to just like throw a lone operative down, all that kind of thing. Like, it's genuinely got good use cases. It's a very powerful strategy. Any other detachment would trade almost any of their stratagems for this. There's like most of the probably one they wouldn't, and then this would be the second best detachment stratagem in almost every detachment.
All right, so Vanguard units. We've already said Raveners, Winged Primes, Gargoyles, Winged Hive Tyrants. What else we got? Von Ryan Leapers, Lictors, Death Leaper, Parasite Mortrex.
Yep, all of the generic lone operatives, so Neurolictor, Lictor, Death Leaper, Parasite and Mortrex are sort of your baseline interesting ones. All of them are very solid in the session. Like the Parasite Mortrex is probably the weakest, but it does have the benefit of being a synapse unit, which does trigger some of your abilities here.
Yeah, exactly right.
Which it gives you that like little awkward thing. You can run the Tyrannicide. I have never and doubt I will ever see anyone do that. If you can tell me what the Tyrannicide does without looking it up, guys, I'll believe you. I won't at all. As somebody who's played a couple of games with 6 of them, because we did it for Blunderdome, it's not worth it. I promise you. The Harpy and Hivecorn are prevented by the aircraft ability restriction, and then the Moloch and the Trigon are the other two. The Moloch with generic access to up down is actually kind of compelling, and unfortunately doesn't really do anything that you would want in Genestealer cults. Like, it doesn't open up enough of a gap for you to deep strike units into, and its damage output is a lot of AP2 damage 1, which is not something that Genestealer cults generally struggle for. The Trigon suffers really badly. It's probably the biggest, the unit that suffered the most from the 3-inch, 6-inch deep strike change, where you can't rapid Ingress 6 away and you can't 3-inch deep strike at all anymore. The Trigon really, really relied on that to deliver it to combat in a meaningful way, because it is in a game where things are very durable. It is the defensive. It is a toughness 10, 3-up save, 14 wound model with no other defenses, and that is again not a place I love being in a world where people are out there playing triple Vindicator.
It's a DDA without an invuln, and we all know DDAs are fairly easy to kill these days.
Yeah, I mean, you get looked like it's got decent odds of getting smoked by a Ballista Dreadnought, right? Like,
correct.
That's not where I want to be. So within that, I think the most compelling ones are the lone operatives. So you've got your Death Leaper, you've got your
stop giving away part 2 juice here.
Yeah,
what are you doing?
They're the most compelling ones. They're the things that you're like, I want these. Death Leaper because he triggers the Avenge the Star Children stratagem as a side benefit. And then Gargoyles and Raveners and those kind of like small units, because you need to have some amount of density for the
spread. You need to have spread. All right, on that note, we're going to do our rating system. So out of 10, my man, as a Tyranid player and a Genestealer cults player, how happy are you with this detachment?
So it's really awkward because everything is here for me to like this. I have broadly found that the play pattern that this detachment creates is very much that, like, Admeki style, I'm going to pin you in and move block you and play one squad of Ridge Runners with a bit of damage and a couple of Scalpel melee units to solve problems, but I'm mostly going to win the game through board control and choking you out and solving a couple specific problems. It's very much like the Outlander Claw play style, just with Gargoyles. Now, Gargoyles are a fantastic data sheet. They are also fiddly little gits that are a pain to move, that you move 4 times every turn, and you're just just measuring everything, and they're just a pain, and it creates this really awkward play pattern where it wants to be a detachment that says go and kill things with your Tyranid units. None of the Tyranid units really do anything, so all your damage is going out the Genestealer cult side, and this is not the best detachment at making Genestealer cult melee be an army or Genestealer cult shooting be an army. It's good at having a unit or two really do its damage. So what you result in is a lot of, I have these 3 units that I will use to deal damage on 3 turns, and then if any of them live, I will continue using them. And other than that, I am playing board control and mode operatives. It's fine, but it's not. Fine. It's not what I want out of. Hey, you've got Tyranids, and I want to like be running people over with pure damage output, right? And that's obviously not what's here, right? And we've already got Biosanctic and Invasion Fleet and Vanguard Onslaught and all those things that tell you how to do that. So it makes sense that this detachment isn't that. But for me, this is much more of a to use the disparaging name. This is the Art of War play style, right? It's the I'm going to win the game by 4 points on turn 7.
Yes,
it's like, great, Lennon. I'm so proud of you. Congrats. I was done an hour ago. Which is why it makes total sense that players like Nick Nanavati took this to LVO, right? And did
100%. It's right up Nick's control army. It's exactly right.
I'll play that. I played Outlander Claw. I like that kind of army, but I can play that army without moving Gargoyles.
Correct. So in the competitive tier list, where would you have
it's like a solid 8 out of 10. Like, it's, where 10 out of 10 is something that is actively needs to be nerfed, and a 9 out of 10 is like the best armies in the game right now that are just like powerful. This is an 8 out of 10. You should not expect to see this everywhere. It is not compelling. I don't think it's powerful enough to draw people to Genestealer Cult unless they specifically care for this type of playstyle. But if you are a Genestealer Cult player that wants to play this style of game, you can 100% win events with this. It is powerful. It is flexible. It has all of the tools that you need to win tournament games, to win casual games. And honestly, it's not, people get mad about Gargoyle move blocking a lot. So I'm not going to say that it's like fun to play against, but you are interacting with your opponent. They're not doing anything particularly egregious. One unit goes back in reserve return. It's not hypercrypting at you.
Yeah, correct.
But it's also a move blocky denial list that's trying to play really tight angles with Ridge Runners and not play the game with you while it stands fight first lone ups on objectives. And that, have you ever tried to deal with a Death Leaper stood on an objective with a Reductive Saboteur behind him in case you tried to rush him? It's not fun. Like, nobody's enjoying it. It's having fun in that situation.
No. These are not questions people like answering.
So yeah, it's really good. It is not a driver to Genestealer cults, I wouldn't say, and it's not it's not beyond the power scope of tournaments, but it is on a level with detachments like Biosanctic and Host of Ascension. And
Well,
I would say it's probably all three of them are slightly better than Outlander Claw right now. Outlander Claw made it pretty poorly from the data slates. I would say that like all three of those are sitting somewhere between like the 8 to like lower 9 power levels here. And Final Day slotting into that is basically a perfect landing as far as competition goes. Right? It's exactly what it should be.
200% agreement. This isn't better than pure Tyranids or the best things you can do with pure Tyranids or the best things you can do with pure GSC, but it's a little bit less, something in the middle, and pretty spicy and interesting for what it brings. So I'm pretty happy with this. I think it's a good detachment. How powerful is it, man? Like the best players in the world using this detachment, where would they rank on the competitive tier list? S tier down to D tier.
The best players in the world in this, it's like solid upper B. I think it's gonna lose to. I mean, to use the stupidest term, it's going to lose to the stuff it loses to. If your detachment if your army and your play rate is capable of dealing with this, it doesn't have a ton outside of that scope to like really make an interesting game with you. If your army is good at dealing with gargoyle move blocks and lone uppers on objectives, then Final Day doesn't have a lot of other questions to ask you. Which I think
Essentially, if you're not afraid of being put in bird jail or getting rushed down by rust stalkers in AdMech, you're not going to be afraid of anything this list does.
I would. This is AdMech Gene Stealer cults, right? I think it's got a little bit more damage output, a little bit less durability, right?
Correct. There's no army-wide -1 to hit
You're not stealth with lone up stratagem and a 5/4 like AdMech.
Correct. Exactly right.
But gargoyles do have the plus 1 to hit. You have a bit more damage output. Which I think if you're like an AdMech player that's bored and wants to do something that's like actually has teeth, I think this is the place to go. But I think AdMech does it better in a to use where my brain is always at in a team's context. I'd rather use AdMech for this role and use Gene Stealer Carriers to do something else.
As something more interesting and more dynamic.
I'm never putting it above B plus in the best hands. None of this is always going to be scary. But there aren't. We're not seeing Eric Latherus out there crushing everybody with crushing everybody with this like he was with Outlander Claw. I'm not exactly jumping on it. We've not seen many results out of Final Day. I can't really like looking through like the Goonhammer stats and stuff like that or our stats. I can't remember seeing Final Day winning GTs particularly, and I know that's because a lot of the best Gene Stealer pilots are playing Biosantic right now. Because Biosantic hasn't changed and is still good, right?
How funny is it that like Gene Stealer cult players are pretty much playing a better melee version than this, and the most of what I'm seeing from the best, especially teams Tyranid players, is they're playing Vanguard, which is kind of a better version of this. And it's kind of interesting to see because Vanguard kind of puts you in jail harder than this list does, but has a little bit less
Vanguard damage output. Like Vanguard Gene Stealers are very, very differently better because you can only run one Patriarch. Which is the best damage dealing output unit in Gene Stealer cults, whereas in Tyranids you can obviously run 3 Broodlords. Broodlords giving out that devastating wounds really helps with the damage output, and then the reroll ones to hit and wound the detachment gives you instead of giving you the or that you get from Vanguard instead of the like the battle shock ability that the Broodlord has, the Patriarch has, just means that that unit just punches up a little more, and the strength 5 on Vanguard Gene Stealers is significantly impactful.
Way better.
In a world of toughness 5 and toughness 9, everything. Having it functional +1 to wound and access to another +1 to wound stratagem potentially with the battle shock ability or Neurolictors really just pushes Vanguard over the edge in terms of this kind of jail list as a damage output army, right? And we were saying Final Day is really good at having one damage unit. It's really bad at having a damage army. Whereas Biosanctic and Host of Ascension and Vanguard Tyranids and honestly Invasion Fleet Tyranids are all much better at like causing problems. So I think if you are somebody who is just playing this as a good player, a competent player, but not one of the best move blockers in the world who's going to be prescient about every option their opponent has, like Nick is, don't put yourself in this situation if you need to do it. Yeah, just very quickly looking at the Goonhammer top 4 stats. There is one 4th place finish for Final Day, which was last weekend, and that is it total for Final Day. It's just not been picked up to the same degree, which is why I think it's hard to say that it's any particularly better than something. And like in that same time period, there is one result for Host of Ascension, and that's it, right? Like Gene Stealer cults are very not punching up at the top level. Like that's from February and January, but Host of Ascension had a top result at LVO. There's a top result for Bioscience, two or three top results for Bioscience in that same time period. Like Gene Stealer cults are not a high player army. We shouldn't expect them to have a ton of top 4s. So it's like it's on a level, but like slightly less performing at the top end than Bioscience and Host, I would say.
I'm going to tell us we got to pump the brakes because we've got to save something for the part 2. We're going to record straight after this. So please sit tight. Thank you very much for coming on, mate. Please plug your wares. Tell people where they can get some more from Innez Wilson or some possible final day coaching.
Even more from me, Innez Wilson, not Innez. It's never Innez. Never Innez.
No, it's a Z. It's a Z at the end. I know how to spell good. Innez.
Adam Camilleri.
Hey, that was better than most, actually. I'll take that over most of what Aussies say.
That's probably for the best. You can find more of me at StatCheck. We do a live show every Tuesday at 11 p.m. UK time. That's 6 p.m. Eastern. You can do the time zone conversion for your own places, your own times. Adam, that's probably like 2 a.m. your time, I assume. It's just something awful. Or like, don't worry about it. I don't know. I don't even know what time zone you're on, Adam.
Me either, dude. I don't know.
If you want to hear more from us, we do meta breakdowns, we do tournament coverage, we do our own general overview of the stats and meta game report, kind of going through what's been doing well over tournaments, what the win rates were, and then we do a gratuitous amount of not talking about Warhammer in an irreverent way. I think that's probably the best way I can describe it without
it's amazing.
So yeah, you can find that at youtube.com/statcheck. And if you want to hear more from us, that's the best way to do it. There's also a bunch of other shows on the network that I'm not going to plug here because they're not me and they don't get to plug themselves in the spot. But there's a bunch of stuff over on us. And you can also see stuff at stat-check.com, like the meta dashboard that we pull all the information from. You can see things like the StatCheck Elo system as well, which is my favorite thing because I get to keep having to try to be at the top. I don't care about the ITC points. I just want to stay at the top of the little thing that updates constantly. And when I'm not there, it's a driver to continue doing better. And that's all we're doing.
It is. On that note, mate, we're going to wrap this one up. Come and join us over on part 2 of Patreon, Art Down Under. Hope to see you there. We're going to especially be talking about list construction and what, if any, matchups this makes better for GSC and or Tyranids. And it should be an interesting chat. So hopefully you'll join us there. If not, sit tight. We should either have Carl Grundy helping me review the Auxiliary Cadre or Dean Sinnbeck helping me review the World Eaters, whatever the hell, Exalted, son of a bitch, spawn thingy guys. That one. Vessels of Wrath. There we go. We got there. I'm good at this. I'm so good at this. Anyway, see you soon, guys. Thanks again for coming on. Innez. G'day, my lovelies. We are back with your third segment for this week's Grotmas final day of Grotmas reviews. I am joined by the number 3 player in the freaking world in the ITC last year, and also the gentleman who, until otherwise, is probably going to be in perpetuity the best Tau player in the ITC until he decides not to be. It's the beautiful Carl Grundy. Hello, mate.
How you doing, man? Thank you for that glorious introduction. A little bit of a correction, sad times. I actually finished 6th at the end of the ITC season, but I was pretty much between the 1st and 3rd for a while. So thanks for the introduction, mate. Well, I have to keep myself honest.
Between 1st and 3rd for like 11 months and 3 weeks.
Yeah, fair.
It is what it is, and the ITC is an unforgiving beast at the best of times. But my dude, we're here to review, and I actually said something to you. I can't remember if it was at World. It wouldn't have been a World Champs. It would have been at LVO. I actually said something to you, like, I reckon if the Auxiliary Cadre for Tau was one of the first Grotmas detachments, you may very well have been playing that at LVO and not your Kauyon, which I think is what you took.
A Red Cad.
Red Cad, that's right. That's
right. You were spot on the money there. It was the conversation we had about, like, if I had enough prep time and get the reps in, I would have definitely ran the Jank in the tank, which is Auxiliary Card, but I just didn't have the time. Going into such a prestigious event with everything riding on it for ITC, I couldn't take that risk.
Fair enough. Well, tell us a little bit about some of the Pure Tide program things that you do if people want to find some more Tau goodness after this segment.
Yeah, basically, I just talk Tau like 24/7, and it's a great place for anybody that's learning the game and maybe wants to pick up some Tau cowfish and wants to kind of perfect the game, whether you're a beginner to go intermediate or intermediate go to expert level. I offer all the solutions to all the problems, and you can find me on the YouTube Pure Tide program if you want to see what I'm about. And then if you fancy coming to know more, I do live calls, I do courses, I do everything educational when it comes to Tau. And it is honestly the most popping Discord, and we've grown it massively over the year and a half, and it's a fantastic place to be. So get on it.
Fantastic. All right, as always, guys, I'm going to be reading the things, and Kyle is going to be giving us the expert hot takes. The detachment rule: integrated command structure. Recruit and Vespid stingwing units from your army gain the following ability. While an enemy unit is within 9 of invisible to this unit, each time a ranged attack made by a friendly Tau model, Tau Empire model that isn't Recruit, Vespid, or Titanic targets that enemy unit, improve the arm penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. So essentially, you run up to a thing, and everything else kills it more better. And then the next part is Tau Empire models, excluding Crute and Vespids, gain the following ability. Localized stealth projectors. While the friendly Crute or Vespid stingwing unit is wholly within 6 of invisible to this unit, that Crute or Vespid unit cannot be the target of ranged attacks outside 18 inches. So they get baby, 18-inch lone up. So the baby lone up, as in like not the 12 or the 6. They get the 18. If they're within 6, wholly within 6 of a Tau Empire unit, and then Tau Empire units get +1 AP if they target something that's within 9 of one of your auxiliary cadre units. Is that correct?
That is correct, yep.
And as if they couldn't give it to Titanic, as if they couldn't throw the Storm Surge a little bone, right?
Oh, I know, man. Jesus Christ, that thing's still sitting in my cupboard.
I know. I mean, I've got mates with 3 of them. Like, they've seen the table like once in the last 2 editions. But how do you feel about this attachment rule? Is it any good?
Right, yeah. So it's good. It's good in terms of it offers a completely different way of playing Tau, which is auxiliaries working with the Tau and the Tau working with the auxiliaries. So the way that I look at this is it's been very cleverly designed in terms of the lone up 18 is needed because otherwise somebody with indirect can just remove all your auxiliaries, then
Correct.
You've got this attachment rule that doesn't work. So that enables you to at least keep those in the game. And I think there's a couple of key units that can really help your Crute brothers out, such as Ghost Keels, maybe the cheeky Firesight Marksman, who's lone up anyway, same with the Ghost Keel. And you can keep those in a good position and you can operate in no man's land easier because you're not going to get shot. And there's some clever tricks that you can do, but that essentially keeps your auxiliaries alive, which obviously, with the extra part of giving the extra AP, can help some of those units in the book that maybe don't have the punch that you need. So, for example, when was the last time you ever saw missile broadsides?
Yeah, like 8th edition, essentially.
Right. So now having basically extra AP, and we'll get into some of the stratagems later, but AP2, damage 2, twin linked, that suddenly becomes appealing. And then ion hammerheads, which are already good, suddenly go from AP2 and overcharge to AP3, again, really good. Yeah. So it allows your units, and even the humble strike team that have been praying for an AP for ages, can suddenly be a 75-point unit that can have 20 shots and spend 5 AP1. It's nothing to be sniffed at.
Yeah,
so
absolutely right.
Your unoptimal units that have not seen the light of day with this detachment. Yeah,
agreed. And I like what you said about the stealth projector part, the lone up 18 being very necessary because ostensibly, without that buff, you are relying on your army rule is only functional as long as you can keep a guardsman alive, which we know is not that easy. It's just not a thing because a Crute is essentially like the durability of a guardsman, defensively. And so operating off that as being like the thing that allows you to have an army rule wasn't always a good place to be. So I think that's very clever. They put the lone up 18 part in there. All right, enhancements, student of Kauyon, 15 points, Crute shaper model only. In the declare battle formation step, you can select up to 3 Crute carnivores or fast stalker units from your army. Those models have the deep strike ability. For 15 points, this seems pretty good.
It's cute, and I'll say there's a lot of chat about this. It's cute, but there's something funny and very tactical as well, at the same time as being funny, about have you left the center objective open for me? Yeah. Well, I'm going to rapid ingress 10 Crute, and guess what? It's sticky now, so lol.
Correct. And it's actually not that good an activator for your army rule because the army rule has to be within 9, and of course you can't deep strike within 9. It's actually much better. It's just like a flex thing to do to just gain more secondaries, more primary, which I like it for a lot more.
Yeah, I'll rapid ingress the Crute, and then they'll move up if you need to. So it's a good way of getting those Crute from usually which are hiding behind a wall into suddenly I'm going to rapid ingress next to a Tau unit that's blown up, now 18, and then go and do my thing.
Correct. Yeah, exactly right. All right, next up is Admired Leader for 20 points, Tau model only, excluding Crute models. Only, in your command phase, you can select up to 1 Crute or Vespid stingwing units within 12 of the bearer. If you do until starting the command phase, improve the leadership characteristic of models needed by 1, and while such a unit is not battle shocked, +1 OC. Is this any good?
Staple. It's in every list. Leadership is something that Tau struggle with. So having +1 to the leadership for important battle shock tests or abilities that can force you to take battle shock, it's crucial. And the extra OC, because it's in the way that OC is activated in the command phase, it could be crucial to either flip an objective that you suddenly have been contested but now control, and then also with the way that the auxiliary card works, being able to have something that doesn't have OC or has low OC, like Vespid or Kroot Hounds, suddenly giving them OC can then go and easily contest. And there's nothing more hilarious for the Tau player, but frustrating for your opponent if 5 Kroot Hounds for 40 points are OC 2 each, because they get 1 from a Kroot character and then 1 from the Admired Leader, and then go woof woof, thank you, I've denied you primary.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, next up, Fanatical Convert for 10 points, Kroot model only. The Bearer's unit has the For the Greater Good ability. This is I'm not sure how I feel about this one, but for people at home, what is the Greater Good ability?
The Greater Good ability is basically can guide something, and then, which obviously is an important Tau mechanic for the +1 ballistic skill, and also can be guided. So not really focusing on the guiding being guided, but having a Lone Spear, for example, who's 90 points is a 10-point cheap upgrade. If you've got 10 points in, shove it in. A Lone Spear who's lone up can guide something that maybe doesn't need the Ignores cover, because you can't get Ignores cover on a Lone Spear because it doesn't have the mark like keyword. But suddenly a Railgun Hammerhead shooting into a tank that doesn't need ignoring cover can be guided by a Lone Spear, which is great. And actually, funnily enough, if you look at the model, he's actually got like a little binocular thing. It's kind of fitting.
All right, last one, Transporter Lock Module for 25 points. Tau Empire Walker only, might as well have just said Commander only with the Deep Strike ability. The Bearer's unit can be set up using Deep Strike ability in the first, second, or third movement phase, regardless of mission rules. But they must be set up within 12 of one or more friendly Kroot or Vespid Stingwing units, and not within 9, of course, of any enemy units. This one seems spicy, but I'm not sure it would make the cut in some of my lists.
That is correct. I think if you line up all your ducks in a row, if you end up going second, this is great. Or because most people won't give you something to shoot turn 1, and a cleverly placed Farstalker unit that's outside of any threat range, and then you can just deep strike turn 1 and retaliate immediately. Okay, good. Would it be worth 25 points? And is it worth setting up all your ducks in a row? No.
Yeah, correct. So in order of importance, how do you rank these enhancements? So Admired Leader, we already said auto take.
Admired Leader number 1, and then the if, maybe, and but is the Fanatical Convert, because it's 10 points. That's the second, and then it'll be probably the Deep Striking Kroot third, and the Translock thing fourth.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, into the stratagems, experimental modifications for 1 CP. It's in your shooting phase or the fight phase. 1 Kroot or Vespid Stingwing unit from your army that has been selected to shoot or fight. And to the end of the phase, improve the AP characteristic of weapons in your unit by 1. 1 CP plus 1 AP on Kroot or Vespid is not bad.
S tier, because you S tier when you lock it in with, say, Angry Gorillas. Rampages, putting them to AP2, so no longer will you cry when a 2-up armor save does armor contempt, and you're like, oh. So extra AP on Kroot Rampages, golden. Everything else, meh.
So this isn't good on this wouldn't tempt you to take a larger unit of Vespid or try anything to make them actually deal some damage?
No.
Because they don't have awful guns.
They're okay, can be kind of cute. I'm not going to write it off, but to be honest with you, my Vespid are in 5-mans, and they're just basically doing this annoying primary denial game. They're not there to do damage.
Yep, totally fair. All right, multi-sensory scanning is up next for 1 CP. Your shooting phase or the fight phase again. 1 Tau Empire unit from your army doesn't decide to shoot or fight. And to the end of the phase, each time model unit makes an attack, reroll a wind roll of 1. If it is a Kroot or Vespid Stingwings unit, you can reroll the wind roll as well. So I'm starting to see a little combo here with the Angry Gorillas.
Yeah, man. I was going to say, insert Angry Gorillas to every one of these questions.
Correct.
Rampages suddenly then rerolling wounds at AP2, and then if you happen to line it up where you shoot your Lone Spear, they're going to be full rerolls to hit, and they have sustained, and they'll be hitting on 3s with full rerolls, sustained, and then full rerolls to wound and AP2. Yes, thank you, and please.
Yes, absolutely. All right, interlocking maneuvers for 1 CP. It's end of the fight phase. 1 Tau Empire unit from your army that was eligible to fight this phase. If your unit is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, it can make a normal move up to 6. Otherwise, your unit can make a fallback move. It cannot embark within a transport via that at the end of this move if it disembarks from a transport this turn. So no get back in. I wish I had have added that to every single Eldari piece of whatever excrement. But is this any good?
Yeah, if there was a rank higher than S, it would be that. This is literally the bread and butter for this detachment. So the two problems with Tau at the moment are, in general, is that, oh no, you've tagged me, I can't do my stuff. That's annoying.
Yeah.
So interlocking maneuvers gets around that. And then it also gives the opponent a problem to solve, which is if they do happen to tag you, then you can do interlocking maneuvers with a normal move, aka, let's say if you, I don't know, move a transport, it's going to go a free movement 12. You can interact with primaries. And I think this key thing here is that the interlocking maneuvers for 1 CP, you can do some crazy stuff. And I don't mind giving one combo for free. The way that you can do interlocking maneuvers with Farsight and Sunforge is insane. I can move if I go second and I rapid ingress and then I heroic intervene, I can go round about an average of 45 to 50 inches in my following turn. Because I rapid ingress, I then heroic intervene, an average of 7 plus the piling 3. And then I go, cool, I've fought you. Then I interlocking maneuvers 10. Then I move 10. Then I charge again, an average of 7 plus a pile-in. And then I could then do the interlocking maneuvers again. So that's around about 50 inches in a turn.
Wowie.
Yeah.
Wowie.
Oh, by the way, I'm on your home field now, and I've admired the leader, so I'm now taking your home field, and that's turn 2.
Yep. Yikes. All right. Pheromone Waypoint is up next for 1 CP. It's in your movement phase. 1 Crute or Vespid unit from your army that hasn't been selected to move yet. Till the end of the phase, each time unit advances, do make an advance roll for it. You just add 6 to the move characteristic. So 1 CP auto 6 advance is quite nice when you're trying to extend a lot of these auras for the +1 AP for the rest of your army. So I think this is good.
It's good. And I mean, the key thing is obviously I'll give you 2 answers to this. One, it's obviously good for the Rampagers, the Angry Gorillas. It's obviously good for Vespid, who can basically go 18 inches and then charge, and then, because there's another stratagem which we'll get into, and then you can interlock maneuvers. But the other thing as well that I like is that it gives you a little bit of element of the Montcar detachment. So the things that are maybe slower, like broadsides, at least you can have an advance roll and still shoot. So it does offer some flexibility with your Tau shooting units, but it also can be capitalized on for your combat threats and your Crute unit. If you do need to auto advance just to get them within that 9 inches, you can just do a CP and get it done.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. Next up, we have Alien Expertise, 1 CP. Your movement phase, 1 Tau Empire unit from your army. And to the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to shoot and declare in a turn at which it advanced. If it's a Crute or Vespid unit, until the end of the turn, you're able to declare a charge also when it advanced. So shoot and charge on Vespid and Crute, or just advance and shoot on everything else. I think this is a banger.
It is. And obviously, you're going to hear a lot of these combos that are all talking about the Rampages because they're cheap and they're great and they're Angry Gorillas, so what's not to love? But being able to suddenly do all of these little combos that we said, it gives you that, as long as you've stockpiled your CP appropriately, you've got a tool that can just exist and do whatever you need to do.
Yeah. Well, in addition to that, we know that by the time 10th edition is all said and done, the most important words we may have to describe it is fast gun good.
Yes.
And so just having this available on like your rail sides, on your hammerheads, in addition to your crisis suits as well, to just advance and shoot still, like you said, you're getting a bit of that juice you get in some of the other detachments.
And also to add an extension of your fast gun, good gun, fast fist, good fist, right?
Yeah, absolutely right, dude. Absolutely right. All right, Guided Fire is the last one for 1 CP. It's in your shooting phase. A 1 Tau Empire unit from your army that isn't Crute or Vespid that has not been selected to shoot this phase. And to the end of the phase, add 1 to the strength characteristic of weapons equipped by models in your unit. If your unit is wholly within 9 of 1 or more Crute or Vespid units from your army, add 2 to the strength as well. Now, funnily enough, some of the better, I will say, ion hammerheads excluded from this, but some of the better damage dealing units in your game usually wield extremely high AP, but not necessarily high strength. Riptides being, Riptides being the one in that I denote. They actually have a wounding problem. They usually don't. Once they're wounded, usually they do the thing, but they hit okay, they wound badly, but then the damage just usually goes straight through most things because they're AP bajillion, especially they're going to be AP freaking 5 in this detachment. This is really good for them, right?
Really good, really good. And I think the key thing to look at here is, like we mentioned earlier before, look at some of the unoptimal profiles right now that are not being seen. Missile broadsides going from strength 7 to strength 9.
Yep.
Then suddenly you can absolutely punk some small transports, T9 vehicles.
Yeah, correct.
You've also got some forges that outside of Retcard are only strength 9, but then suddenly go to strength 11. And then if you happen to have Farsight in there, it's +1 to wound with strength 11, so you could be wounding most things on 2s. Your Iron Hammerheads going from strength 8 to strength 10 is a huge breaking point. And then obviously you've got your other units like your Crisis, the missiles going from strength 7 to strength 9, the bursts going from strength 5 to strength 7, the flamers going from strength 4 to strength 6. So you can see all these like optimization and the breakpoints, and you can do that within your list building. So this stratagem is key. In terms of, that was the last stratagem. When the two main ones are obviously going to be interlocking maneuvers and the extra strength, because that's just huge from an efficiency point of view. And then the rest of it is just what you can afford and what you're prioritizing. So this is a really key point. And I think you do need to build your list around like having little units like a single crew tox hiding around next to your hammerheads and stuff like that, being able to be like, hey, bro, shoot better. Who knew that all it took for a Riptide to get good with its gun is a single crew dude looking at it and going, hey, man, you got a big gun. You got a big gun. Do you want to kind of like make it better? Because rock dude, and it's like, you know what? Screw you, crew. Watch this.
Check this out. I'll straight up and be straight up honest with you. If these 6 stratagems weren't, only crude and Vespid or only the other way or one way, if these 6 stratagems were open to every single Tau unit in the Tau Codex, this would be the 6 best stratagems that I've ever possibly seen in one detachment.
Exactly. I'd agree.
Yeah. Plus 1 AP, reroll to wound, 6-inch reactive move on demand at the end of the opponent's fight phase, advance and do whatever you want.
It's good. It's
advance
good.
And do whatever you want again. Plus 2 strength on demand wherever you want. Like it is crazy good. But because they've done a great job in balancing this between the auxiliary units and the Cow and the true Tau Empire units, it actually feels like a pretty well balanced, awesome play to play the army.
It's a different take. And I actually was chatting with Josh, and obviously it's not just Josh, it's his team. And he, we chatted, he was like, oh, so do you like it? I was like, initially, I'll be honest, I kind of almost cried. I was like, what the hell? I wanted like the vehicle detachment, blah, 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 blah. But when I actually took a moment to sit down and think about the application of the stratagems and the overall feel of it, it's super powerful because it's not something that Tau have ever been considered good at in terms of primary combat and stuff like that. And all this solves those little niche problems that Tau players face on the regular. And I think this detachment is 1, fun, 2, it's got a very creative element to how they work together. And I think the problem with this detachment at the moment is it sounds all gravy and all these positives, but it is actually, well, what do you take? You can't have it all. You have to be very selective.
Correct.
So it needs a very creative approach and a tactical approach to how many auxiliaries am I taking versus what damage dealing units I'm bringing. But overall, fun, flavorful, and new. And it's exactly what Tau have been looking for a while. Something new.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, so out of 10 as a Tau player, how happy are you with this detachment?
I'd give it a solid, at the moment, I would give it a solid 7 because I'm finding that, again, I'm still having a little bit of an existential crisis in terms of what I'm taking and how I'm going to kind of build the list. And I think at the moment, the meta is not really helping. But overall, I'm kind of happy that we've got some new ways of playing. And I think it's going to be quite a nice little staple for what Tau could potentially be changed into in the future, whether it be through rules updates, whether it be through new codex when the time comes for a different edition. So I think this is a really good creative way and a creative staple of changing the Tau list building or the Tau feel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And how powerful do you think this is? So if you were to put like a strong, competent Tau player on this list, how far up the tier rankings do they get from S tier down to D tier?
I'd say it probably exists somewhere between B+ and A. Probably B+. And I think that even though it is very powerful, I think, because I obviously always analyze the meta from a top level to top level, I think it's going to struggle because there's a couple of things that people can do to stop its tricks. And top players will easily be able to figure that out. Whereas the mid games that are played, I think it's going to take a while for the meta to really understand what it does. And I think that's the window of opportunity for Tau players. Get it while it's hot because it has got its downsides.
Totally agree, mate.
Like a combat rush army would just like
pressure.
Pressure.
Yeah.
And that's why you need to lean into more rampages to be able to stem the bleed.
Exactly right. Well, that's one thing we'll go talk over about part 2, because there is a very fine line you need to balance with list construction in this one, because you have the ability to build in like countercharge deterrence to get some respect from your opponent. But then once you've taken that unit, its support structure, and then enough utility units and Vespid units, recruit units, to make your army detachment work, you're left with this awkward amount of points in which to perfectly pick the things and targets you're going to kill, because there's pretty much no Tau unit that's good at killing everything all the time. You have to pick the right one for the right meta, and you won't be, like you said, you won't be able to have it all.
And like, obviously, to give some of your viewers a little bit of a hook, if you will, what I would say as a free bit of advice is look at balancing the list in terms of, small MSU pieces, have at least like 2 to 3 recruit units, maybe look at some hounds, but really focus on crisis suits and other efficiencies like the broadsides and the hammerheads. I'm sure we're going to go on to lists and stuff in your part 2, and that's where we'll get a lot of spice.
Beautiful. Catch us there, guys. That is it for us. Go and get some Pure Tide program in your life. And look after each other. We'll see you back for the final segment with Dean Sinnbeck with the Vessels of Wrath in a short time. And thank you very much again, Kyle Grundy, for coming on. You're an absolute legend.
Welcome, man, as always.
G'day everybody, and welcome back to our last segment on this week's review, and the very last time I'll be reviewing any one of these gosh darn diggity Grotmas detachments, which, like you've heard on the previous episodes, it's been a lot. It's been a long time, and there is still going to be a couple that I haven't done, but one that was heavily requested by my Patreons was the Vessels of Wrath, or as I like to call them, the Mugs of Angry, because they're vessels. They're wrath. They're angry mugs. Yeah, just angry pots and pans is how I like to think of them. And to that end, I've been joined by one of the wonderful, wonderful gentlemen in our community, in the Australian community. He is the captain of my local team for the national competition in Team Victoria, and he's also the captain of the international WTC team for Team Australia. His name is Dean Sinnbeck. Welcome, brother. How you doing?
G'day, mate. Thanks for having me.
Dude, you are a man who does pretty more than I do every week, and it's very impressive. You always host games on Tuesday nights, and many other times in the week you're managing 2 teams of massive egos and just debatable social skills. And you put it all together.
Oh, there's no debate, man. They are severely lacking social skills.
Each one of those pairs of beer, we both call close friends, so we're only dissing our mates here. But you are a dedicated World Eaters player through the good times and the bad times and everything else in between. And there was no one else I wanted to reach out to do this with. So, mate, tell us about what you do. Tell us anybody who wants to get more of your content, and then give us your hot takes on the Vessels of Wrath.
All right, sounds good. So, first of all, in addition to the 2 leadership roles that I hold within the Australian community as captain of Team Victoria and captain of Team Australia, I also have a YouTube channel, Blog for the Blood God. You guys have probably heard of it. And basically, it's a mixture of Chaos Space Marines and World Eaters stuff. These days, pretty heavily prioritizing the World Eaters, because that's what I've been playing a lot of personally. And basically, I do tactics and strategy and all that sort of stuff, reviews over on that channel. And recently, I decided to test the Vessels of Wrath and took it to Uprising, which was the Australian ITC Championships, which is the biggest event in Australia, big 8-round major event, and did quite poorly with the Vessels of Wrath detachment.
He has not heard the end of it by
no, that shame is not going away anytime soon. I've performed quite well in the past with the Berserker Warband detachment, but given that this event, there's a few things to note. One of them was that it was using the GW terrain rules, which basically means if you've got a savvy opponent who sits further than 1 inch from the wall, they can make it very difficult for you to charge them. And then also they were using Games Workshop.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah. And then they were also using Games Workshop terrain layouts, which are, some of them were quite inhospitable to, your melee focused armies. So going into the event, I was like, look, it's going to be extremely unlikely that I'm able to win this thing. given the if I'm playing World Eaters and then these these caveats drawn. So I was like, well, you know what? That sounds to me like a perfect opportunity to test something and experiment. So I
Correct.
wrote what I thought was the best Vessels of Wrath list, which, in hindsight, the list just becomes infinitely better if it's the Berserker Warband.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to test these things in order to find that out properly.
And kudos to you.
Because on paper, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, on paper, when I saw this, I was like, oh, wow, this is actually a contender for Berserker Warband. Hasn't turned out to be the case in practice, but it is what it is. And, kudos to you for having the cojones to, pressure cook, a detachment you hadn't taken to an event before at a, super major. Not many people would have the guts to do such a thing. And when you said you did really badly, you went 4-4, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
and it's worth noting that it was 4-4, which is not a stellar record.
But it's not that bad either.
Yeah, and all 4 of my losses were really close. Like most of them were within 1 or 2 victory points, and my wins were all massive. Like the games that I won, I absolutely destroyed. So if you were using like a WTC scoring metric, all of my losses would have been draws. And my wins would have been 17, 18, 19-point wins. So with that considered, with that factored in, it's obviously a singles event, so that doesn't reflect in the placings or anything like that. But it's still worth noting that this faction and this detachment, it's not horrible. And I shared your opinion when it came out. I was like, you know what, there's a potential here. This could be better. And before the detachment got released, I was very pessimistic. I was like, you know what, the Berserker Warband detachment, in my opinion, is one of the best in the game. Like, you look at some of the stratagems that the World Eaters have access to, and they make the mouth water of most people. Like, this.
Yeah, correct.
So
I know why you were. I can guess why you were trepidatious, because you'd already seen the glory, the majesty that was the Thousand Suns detachment and the Death Guard detachment, and you were like, okay, if it's on par with these, I will have unheard of and unread this thing the first time I read it. I will say it is the best of the Cult Chaos Space Marine detachments. Like, it is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
The other two.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
It's not hard to be better, though. It's not.
And to be honest, I still think that with a little bit of further testing, people might crack it and might find ways to make it work. But because World Eaters have such a limited selection of units,
exactly,
it's like, and because both of these detachments have a somewhat similar identity in that they're fast melee pressure lists that do heavy damage in combat, right? Like, that identity doesn't change based on which detachment you run. And then that kind of results in, it's just like one of them is going to just be better.
Correct.
It's like when you look at a unit and they've got multiple different war gear options, but the unit is a dedicated combat unit. So it's like, well, whichever combat weapon is better is just the one you always take. It's a similar sort of theory here where it's like, well, this faction is all about being really fast, doing only combat, and doing heavy damage in combat. So whichever detachment is better at that is just always going to be the one that you take.
Yeah, there's no real debate.
Yeah, and that's something that World Eaters players have to navigate, and it's not, it's not particularly interesting to navigate that challenge.
Yeah.
But it's necessary nonetheless.
I'm of the opinion that both T-Suns and World Eaters are due for another 50% unit release, another wave of releases. Considering that,
I agree.
So Death Guard feels like a very fleshed out army. It feels very fleshed out. It feels like it's got it's got 6 or 7 infantry options between Poxbringers, Cultists, Plague Marines, the Terminator options, yada yada yada, and then a bunch of mechanized options. In fasty blow drones, transporty rhinos, PBCs, Predators, stuff like that. You have 6 units in your book that are takeable, that are even an option.
I'm hesitant to call me pessimistic, but I'm always quite nervous for when we do get a Codex release, because one of the challenges that World Eaters players have is that the identity of our faction is so strong that it's we don't shooting is heresy to a World Eater. Like, it's all about just getting in their face and punching them. And it's like, how much creativity can GW really express in the unit options when it's like that? So, like, for example, there's, all the rumors about, maybe we're going to get Khorne Berserkers riding Juggernauts. And it's like, yeah, that'd be cool and all, but wouldn't they kind of just fill the same role on the tabletop as 8-bound? Like, they're a slightly tougher, slightly faster, hit slightly harder than Khorne Berserkers. It's like, cool. So they're 8-bound.
They would have to make 8-bound slower. And they'd have to they'd have to make space in the identity for them.
And then the challenge will be like, if they don't do something pretty dramatic with them, people are just going to go, okay, cool. What's better, 8-bound or Berserker riding Juggernauts? And then you just max out whichever one's better.
Yeah, correct. It would be like them putting 8-bound into, it would be like them making Wolfen the same as 8-bound in Space Wolf. And then you'd be like, do I take the 8-bound / Wolfen or do I take the Thundercav? And then one of those would completely disappear.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I think they've got to do some pretty dramatic stuff. Maybe making Exalted 8-bounds Chain Fists go to damage 3, because then you'd have damage 3 on them, damage 2 on your regular 8-bound.
Yeah.
And then maybe the Berserker Juggernaut guys are damage 1, but have more attacks or something to that regard. Like, there's things they could do.
For sure.
But it's at the end of the day, it's going to be very difficult for them to create, 6 interesting, unique detachments. Like, that's going to be hard.
Well, let's jump in and review this one. So, Vessels of Wrath, the detachment rule is Wrath of Khorne. At the start of the battle round, after activating your Blessings of Khorne, you can select one or more models from your army from those listed below, including models that are embarked within transports. World Leaders characters that aren't epic heroes, so no Khan or Angron. 8-bound champions, Exalted 8-bound champion, Khorne Berserker champion, or World Leaders Terminator champion. You can select the same type of model multiple times. The maximum number of models you can select depends on the battle size. 3 is what you get in a Strike Force 2,000-point game. And to the end of the battle round, each of those models has the Vessels of Wrath keyword. We recommend marking such with a suitable token. Then select one Blessings of Khorne that is not currently active for your army. Until the end of the battle round, that Blessing of Khorne is active for Vessels of Wrath units from your army in addition to any others. So it is very likely that on the turns that you're trying, you have 3 blessings active on the 3 units that you have selected. That's true, yeah?
That is correct, yes.
Which ones have you found that you roll for, and then which ones usually your flex choose?
So, having just come back from an 8-round event, I can tell you that in almost every single battle round of every single game, I effectively didn't roll. Like, I would just roll the dice, and as long as there was 2 doubles in there, I'd be like, cool, I'm taking the +2 move and the Feel No Pain army-wide, and then I'm using my vessels to put Advance and Charge on these 3 units.
3 units, yeah.
The only exception to that was every now and then, depending on the matchup, I'd be like, well, I need sustained hits and lethal hits. In which case,
stuck in the grind, yeah.
If it's partway through the game and you don't need the Advance and Charge or you don't need the +2 move anymore, you basically just do the same thing, but you go Feel No Pain, sustained hits, and then I'm going to put lethal hits on these 3 units.
Yeah. I mean, sounds pretty good. It's a pretty good detachment rule.
It's quite good. It is quite good. It does provide a lot of confidence, I'm going to say, in knowing that you're going to be able to get the Advance and Charge when you want it. Because one of the biggest problems with the World Leaders in the other detachment is, you spend your first turn setting up, preparing for, your second turn where you're going to go in and kill everything. And then on that second battle round, if you don't roll Advance and Charge, you're in a lot of trouble, and that can be really painful. So this gives you the confidence to know that that's just not going to happen.
Yep.
So you really can, in that first turn, set up your army knowing with absolute certainty that the 3 units that you're planning to send in next turn will have Advance and Charge if you want them to. So Beautiful. That's the main plus for the detachment. Unfortunately, that's where it stops. It stops on confidence because there's every chance in the other detachment. In fact, it's quite likely, particularly if you're planning to do it on the turn 2, and you spend your first turn putting Berserkers and Jackals on objectives, so you have access to rerolls on your blessings. Like, it's very likely that you're going to get the Advance and Charge, and also depending on what your opponent does, it's entirely likely that you won't need it. Because when you position up like that and you go, cool, I'm going in, Next turn, I'm going to advance charge, and I'm going to be able to basically charge your home objective from where I am.
Yep.
Your opponent just goes, okay, cool, and they come to you because they know that they can't hide. So they come to you, and they come out into the open, and then you don't need the advance and charge anymore. So between the times that you don't need it and the times that you get it, the probability of you not getting it and needing it is quite low. At least in my experience, it's very rare that I'm just like, oh, I lost that game because I didn't get advance and charge the turn that I needed it. That's very rarely what causes you to lose the game. But what does cause you to lose the game is failing to kill the things that you hit. And unfortunately, this detachment loses the +1 attack and the +1 strength on the charge that the Berserker Warband gets. And that very often translates to a -1 to wound, a penalty that applies to you. Because when you're 1 strength less, all of a sudden your Berserkers are strength 5 instead of strength 6. So if they're hitting anything that's strength 5, toughness 5, toughness 3, toughness 6, all of that range of things, you're -1 to wound. Your Exalted 8-bound, they go in with their Eviscerators, and instead of being strength 6, they're strength 7, they become strength 6, and then all of a sudden, into certain toughness characteristics, you have a -1 to wound debuff applied to you. And that can be just truly heartbreaking when you go in and you realize, so not only am I losing 1 attack, but I'm also -1 to wound into that target. And it just means that the damage that you're used to being able to do just isn't there.
It's
all of a sudden you've got
I've never heard of I think everyone just assumed like World Eaters could not be anemic in damage dealing, like just impossible to be anemic. But you're just describing a bunch of awful breakpoints that you don't cross.
Like there's things like and the thing is they're also very common breakpoints. Like, so for example, you go into something like a Rhino, and all of a sudden your Exalted 8-bound, when they lose 1 attack each, like that's a significant loss. And then all of a sudden you're not killing that Rhino. You're killing, instead of killing it 90% of the time, you're killing it 70% of the time. You're not killing that Chaos Knight that you've just charged. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I can't, it's not like I can run a unit of 4 Exalted 8-bound to make up for it. So and then if you do put the sustained hits, that goes some way towards fixing the problem, but nowhere near enough. Like a guaranteed extra attack is better than having to roll a 6 to hit on your 3 attacks.
That's fair.
To get an extra hit. So I just found that rule alone, losing the +1 attack and the +1 strength, just really, really hurt.
All right, next up of the enhancements, we have Arch Slaughterer for 25 points. Improve the armor penetration characteristic of the bearer's melee weapons by 1. When that bearer is a Vessel of Wrath, improve the damage characteristic of those by 1 also. Now, you and I both got pretty wild over this because we were like, oh, the Mo is back. Is the Mo back in this detachment?
Well, the Mo is interesting in this detachment primarily because Berserkers became very interesting in this detachment. Like that Mo is... it's the same as the Berserker's Glaive, essentially. Like, it's slightly worse than the Berserker's Glaive. But Berserkers themselves, and I'm sure we'll talk about this when we talk about the stratagems, but Berserkers got a significant glow-up in this detachment. So, he's interesting in the context of Berserkers became interesting.
Yeah. All right. Next up is Vox Diabolus for 20 points. Each time the bearer's unit destroys an enemy unit with a melee attack, lol, as if you're going to destroy it with shooting, roll 1d6, adding 1 to the result. If the bearer is a Vessel of Wrath on a 4+, you gain a CP. Meh.
Yes, quite meh. There's way too many caveats to maybe generate a CP, and chances are by the time you've sent your non-epic hero out to kill something, he's exposed himself and is probably going to die next turn. In which case you have 1 shot to maybe get a CP. This is not worth even talking about any further.
Exactly right. And it's 1 shot on a 3+. If it was 1 shot on a 2+, it's still no, but it feels a lot better than a 1/3 fail for 20 points.
Yeah.
All right. Avenger's Crown for 15 points. If the bearer is destroyed by a melee attack, if it does not fought this phase, roll 1d6, adding on a 2+, do not remove it from play. The destroyed model can fight after, fight on death. 2+ fight on death for 15 points, which I quite like.
Yeah, that's good. I really like that on a Demon Prince. I think most of these enhancements, obviously, the Demon Prince is a big, scary model that's not an epic hero, so most enhancements are going to be better on him than they are on other things. But there's a better enhancement for your Demon Prince, which you're about to explain to us all.
Yep, Gateways to Glory for 10 points. Demon Prince, a world it is mounted model only. Each time the bearer makes a normal advance or charge move, it can move through terrain and models as if they were not there. When doing so, it can move within engagement range of such models, but can't end, of course, within engagement range. And yes, 10 points to go past walls, but go through models. That's so freaking good for 10 points.
Yeah, this is arguably the single best thing in the entire detachment. So I had this on a Demon Prince. I ran Demon Prince in a bunch of 8-bound for the 4-up invulnerable save, the Demon Prince on foot. And basically, he's close to unplayable in the other detachment.
Correct.
Because he can't keep up with the 8-bound, right? Whereas if you give him this enhancement, with the 8-bound now struggle to keep up with him. Because he's just gone straight through enemy models, straight through terrain, straight through everything. And with advance and charge being super fast, because he's not a epic hero, he can be one of your Vessels of Wrath units.
Yeah.
So you're able to sort of just go, I want advance and charge on him and these 2 units of 8-bound, and then I'm just going to send that nugget straight up into the middle of the table. Very, very effective.
All right. First,
this guy was my star performer.
Fantastic. Aspire to Infamy is the first of the stratagems. It's in the fight phase. 1 Khorne Berserker or Jackal unit from your army that has not been selected to fight this phase and is within 8 of one or more friendly World Eaters character models. Until the end of the phase, improve the strength and arm penetration characteristic of melee weapons equipped by non-character models in your unit by 1. Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously...
So this is what I was talking about with the Berserkers getting the glow up.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, +1 strength, +1 AP for 1 CP is a fantastic buff.
I do want to apply a little caution with this one though, because it sounds amazing, but then when you remember that you effectively lost 1 strength by being in this detachment.
Yeah.
So you're gaining the +1 strength from this, but it's kind of comes out in the wash, and. So realistically, you're spending the CP for the extra AP, which is fantastic. Like extra AP on your Khorne Berserkers. One of their biggest weaknesses was that they were only AP 1 on the bulk of their attacks.
Correct.
So it is good. However, it's not. You're not going to all of a sudden run 40 Berserkers in Rhinos because you have this stratagem. Like the list is probably going to stay the same in that most people ran like 1 or 2 small, like 1 big unit, 1 small unit of Berserkers. Most people weren't running much more than that. And I don't think this is going to change the math in a significant enough way for people to sort of, double down on that Berserker tech.
Yeah, I agree. Overshadowed by None is up next for 1 CP. It's in the fight phase. 1 World Eaters Infantry, World Eaters Mounted, or World Eaters Demon Prince unit from your army that has not been selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time model your unit makes an attack that targets a monster or vehicle, you can re-roll the wound roll. 1 CP re-rolls the wound. Very nice.
So this is very nice. It's one interesting thing that's worth noting about this detachment, which we'll notice as we go through these, is a lot of the stratagems are kind of like a weird alternative version of an existing stratagem in the other detachment. So for this one, for example, the other detachment has a CP for +1 to wound when attacking vehicles, monsters, and characters. Whereas this detachment has reroll wounds when attacking vehicles and monsters. Now, it's worth noting that characters has been left off the list here, which means that if you're going into like an infantry unit that has a character attached, there's no way to buff your damage.
Yep.
Whereas the other detachment, you can use I don't know the name of the stratagem, but the stratagem that gives you the +1 to wound versus characters. So
if you don't
the
know
other
what it's called,
detachment's
I
better.
assume no one knows what it's called.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that like reroll wounds is not as good as +1 to wound. Unless you have like dev wounds or something like that, which to be fair, the Master of Executions can have. It can be interesting, but ultimately it falls short of the other detachment in this for this stratagem anyway.
Is there much merely twin linked in World Eaters?
No. Very little. The Terminators have 1 out of 5 guys has the twin lightning claws, but I think that's about it.
All right, next up is Gory Dedication, 1 CP, end of the fight phase. 1 World Eaters unit from your army that destroyed one or more enemy models with a melee attack this phase. Select one objective marker you control that your unit is in range of. That objective marker remains under your control until your opponent's level of control. Yeah, you stick the objective. Now, the timing on this and the T's and C's on this are very good. So it's 1 World Eaters unit from your army that just destroyed one or more enemy models with a melee attack. Select one objective marker you control. And your unit was in range of. So the thing that you kill doesn't need to be in range of the objective marker. You can string all the way out to him, kill him, and just have one guy with 1 millimeter of its base on that objective, and you kill the model, 12 inches away or something crazy, and then you sticky that one.
Correct.
The timing is interesting though. If you wipe the unit, can you pile onto an objective you're not on, then sticky it? I don't believe you can.
I don't think so. No. And this is similar in that there's a stratagem in the other detachment that's very similar. Basically, this one is sticky when you kill something. The other one is sticky when you die. And sticking when you die is probably 100 times better. So one of the things that I noticed was that, often one of the strategies as a World Eaters player is in your first turn, you throw some jackals out onto the center objective, and maybe you throw some berserkers out onto your expansion objective and you go, cool, I've got these units, I'm sitting on these objectives, and you dare your opponent to deal with them. And the thing is they know that if they just shoot you off the objective, you're just going to spend a CP and sticky it.
Correct.
Which means they have to come out and physically put models on the objective, which means you're luring them into the trap that next turn you can spring your 8-bound on them. Whereas you can't do that in this detachment because you need to kill something on an objective in order to sticky it. You need to do it in your turn, not in theirs. And as a result, you're telegraphing it to your opponent. So it's way worse.
I agree. I still think this is a good version of the sticky objective ability, but I do think that, just dying and sticking it is better because you put your unit on the objective, and if it's the only unit you're in your entire army your opponent can see, you've got that 5 points. It's just in the back. It's just bank. It's just whether you have to pay a CP for it or not.
Yeah, I found I didn't use it. I didn't use it once across the 8 rounds, and didn't use it in any of the practice games we played either. And what I found was that often I'd jump out and I'd kill somebody off an objective, and I'd look at it and be like, okay, cool. Do I want to sticky this or not? And I'd look at the game state, and I'd be like, if I sticky this, he's just going to move that unit over there and take it back, or he's just going to do that. Like there was almost always an avenue for them to take it back. So as a result, I didn't want to do it. Whereas when you're able to stick it in your opponent's turn after they've finished their movement phase, right? So in your opponent's turn, they do their movement, they're not on the objective, they shoot you off, and then when you decide whether to sticky it or not, it's so much easier because you know that they can't then move on and take it, because they've finished their activation. So
I mean, they've already got a unit on them when they shoot you dead. Cool, you don't sticky it.
Exactly. Whereas this stratagem, it kind of like it tells your opponent what your plan is, whilst your opponent still has the capacity to counter that plan.
Yeah, correct.
And as a result, I just never found it worth using.
All right, Punish the Craven is up next for 1 CP. Your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit that isn't a monster or vehicle is selected to fall back. 1 World Eater's Infantry or World Eater's Demon Prince unit from your army within engagement range of that enemy unit. When that enemy unit falls back, all models in that enemy unit must take a desperate escape test when doing so. If your unit is a Vessels of Wrath unit, subtract 1 from each of those tests. This one seems really powerful. Thank God it doesn't affect monsters and vehicles, otherwise this would be potentially busted. But how do you feel about this one?
I think this one is a detachment-defining stratagem. In the same way that I think the Demon Prince that can walk through walls is one of the best things in the detachment, so is this. This is absolutely devastating in some matchups. So just to give some context, one of the rounds that I played was into Ultramarines Vanguard list. The bloke had Calgar leading a big unit of aggressors. And basically, like, I charged something, he heroically intervened in, and then in his turn, he was like, I can spend a CP to fall back, shoot, and charge, or I can just do that being Ultramarines or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But he's like, I can fall back, shoot, and charge. Haha. So he's like, yep, I'm going to fall back. And I'm like, okay, first you need to take a leadership test because there's an 8-bound unit nearby. And he's like, okay, cool. And he's like, I passed it. Haha. And I was like, okay, cool. Now I need you to take a desperate escape test for every model in that unit. And on a 4-up, they die. Like a 1, 2, or 3, they just die. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, this is the stratagem. I told you. And he's like, oh, no. So then he's like, do you mind if I don't fall back? And I'm like, look, I'll let you do the take back. You do you. But this is the situation you're in. You either fall back and take the desperate escapes, or you stay in combat with me, and therefore you can't shoot me, like your move. I'm happy for you to go whichever way you want. But like that was so amazingly powerful.
That's mad. I love it.
And he ended up deciding, he's going to roll for it. So he fell back, and I think I killed 8 out of the 11 guys in the unit. And then he was like, I've lost the game now. And I'm like, you have.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate, but you have.
Yikes.
That stratagem is absolutely bonkers, especially because World Eaters, nobody wants to stay in combat with World Eaters.
No one.
Nobody's ever gone, I'm in combat with World Eaters and I'm okay with it, except for, some very niche, factions like Necrons and things like that are happy to just continually regenerate forever. But, most people being in combat with World Eaters is the last place you want to be.
Correct.
So people want to fall back often. And therefore this stratagem is insane.
Meet force with force for 1 CP. Your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has shot. 1 World Eater's infantry, World Eater's mounted, or World Eater's demon prince unit from your army that lost 1 or more wounds as a result of these attacks. Unit can make a blood surge move. To do so, roll d6. Models your unit move a number of inches equal to the result, but must end as close as possible to the closest enemy unit, excluding aircraft. When doing so, these models can be moved within engagement range of enemy unit. If your unit is a Khorne Berserker or a Vessel of Wrath, you can re-roll the d6 for how many inches you move. Once again, this sounds very good, but I do believe the meta and players in general are getting much better at playing around surge moves than they were before. How do you feel about this?
So I 100% agree that this is something that it's a bit of a noob stomper. Like if your opponent knows what's going on, they can just go, no, I'm just not going to let you have it. But at the same time, this is another one of those things that's kind of detachment defining. Like one of the main things that this detachment can do that the other one cannot do is blood surge move with 8-bound.
It's true.
And sometimes you can create situations where your opponent kind of has to risk it. Like if you've got exalted 8-bound on an objective, and your opponent wants to take it from you, sometimes they actually have to get on the objective and risk the blood surge, or there's a few different scenarios where you can make it work. But the problem is most opponents, like you said, these days, blood surge is not new. It's not a new mechanic. People understand the way it works and people play around it, like they'll put a little rhino next to you so that when you surge move, you have to surge into the rhino and therefore you're not surging into their valuable units, or they'll stay 7.1 inches away. So even if you roll a 6, you can't tag them. There's lots of things that they can do.
I mean, the sweetest plum of all time is you have 6 exalted 8-bound on the middle objective, out of line of sight, because you're playing one of those objectives where WTC, where it's blocked from their deployment zone, and they pull area denial and extend battle lines, and you're just like, pay dirt.
Yeah.
Just cackle. All right. Brazen Contempt is the last one for 1 CP. Your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. 1 World Eaters unit from your army that was selected as a target of one of those enemy units attacks. To the end of the phase, each time an attack targets your unit, if the strength of that attack is greater than the toughness characteristic of your unit, -1 to the wound roll. If it's a Vessel of Wrath, just -1 to the wound roll. No caveat or rider saying your strength has to be higher. This was another one that when I saw it, I thought, oh my God, Dean's 30 naders are going to have a great time. Did this stratagem?
I actually kind of largely themed my list around this stratagem because I thought this was going to be, again, another one of those detachment defining stratagems. Because I was like, hang on, you take 6 exalted 8-bound, you put a demon prince near them, so now they're toughness 6 with a 4-up invulnerable save and a 5-up feel no pain, and then you put -1 to wound on them. Who's killing that? In what world do people kill that? I was like, that's insane. So I was like, that was my whole strategy, was that you do that, and basically they're going to shoot at you, they're going to kill 1 guy, and then you're going to blood surge move into them. And I'm like, this is a powerful combo, right? The problem is, it turns out, I don't know whether it was my dice or whether it's just that the lethality in the meta has gone up significantly, but people were not struggling to kill it at all. I was just like, okay, cool. I put one unit 8-bound in front of a ruin, the Demon Prince and the other units inside the ruin, and people will be like, cool, I can just see one unit, Oath of Moment, and then they just shoot it with a billion things and it just dies. Or it might be the prevalence of things like lethal hits, and all of a sudden it's like it doesn't matter that you neg one to wound because they're fishing for lethal hits anyway. Or like my Death Guard opponent, almost everything he had was anti-infantry 2+ or anti-infantry 4+.
Yep.
So it's like being negative 1 to wound doesn't help there either because it's unmodified wound rolls that get through.
And look,
I found myself struggling to find an opportunity to get good value from this stratagem.
So the meta has been dealing with, Custody Wardens for like 18 months now. And these guys are like 1 pip less durable than Custody Wardens, right?
Yeah.
Same amount of wounds, same toughness 6, but they have a 2-up, 4-up, 4-up, and you have a 3-up, 4-up, 5-up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people kill Wardens. Like, so yeah, you're right.
I actually found that some of the value that I got from this stratagem was actually on some of the smaller things like the Khorne Berserkers and stuff.
Exactly right. I was about to say,
because sometimes what would happen is, I'd put my Exalted Brick out into the middle and people would like line most of their army up to see that, and then just something small that can see my Berserkers. And then I'd be like, okay, cool. I'm going to let you kill the 8-bound, but I'm not going to let you kill those Berserkers. And now that Berserker unit survives, they get a Blood Surge for free.
Yep.
They're higher a C, so it's like, cool, well, I still hold that objective because you failed to kill the Berserkers. Then next turn, those Berserkers are able to go out and deny another objective because there's 4 OC left in the unit. So I actually found that it was more valuable on those small units, primarily because people weren't committing as much into those small units.
And people already commit enough to, like, I usually, especially when I'm playing Guard against World Eaters, I will commit enough to kill like 2 units of 6 8-bound to the unit of 8-bound to not risk, because usually there's only 1 unit of 6 8-bound. And so I'm like, I Scorched Earth the ever-living crap out of that unit. And there's not really any buff that's going to save him versus like 2 units of Scions and 2 tank commanders or whatever.
Yeah, correct. And the thing about World Eaters, playing World Eaters, like, there's no durability buff that's even close to as powerful as just being out of line of sight.
Exactly right.
Like, if your opponent can't see you, it's effectively like saying, okay, you're negative infinite attacks, you're negative infinite strength, like, I have a 1-up save, like, because you can't see me, so you just can't do the damage. So I think World Eaters players are better off mastering the navigation of terrain and using that to their advantage, whereas this stratagem kind of entices you. It falsely leads you on to think that you're going to be tough enough, and you're just not. And as a result, you end up putting something out there, and then your opponent goes, okay, I guess I'm coming all in, and when they do, they win that fight. And then you're like, damn it, I should have just stayed out of line of sight.
In addition, the game is so good at dunking on 1 unit. It's so damn good. And it's only getting better with Eldar. Like, the Eldar is just going to even exponentially do worse. To your
and one of the things about this detachment, it heavily incentivizes big bricks, right? Because a lot of these stratagems, you get a lot more value out of them if you've got big units. So, like, Blood Surge move, that's not great on a unit of 3 Exalted 8-bound, because if they shoot you and kill one of them, do you really even care if you Blood Surge move in with 2 Exalted 8-bound? Like, you're probably not going to kill the thing that you tagged anyway.
Yeah.
Right? The neg 1 to wound, who really cares about it when you've only got 3 Exalted 8-bound? Like, who can't kill that? There's tons of these stratagems where you're like, so you build the list around going, well, if I have 6 Exalted 8-bound, well, now when I Blood Surge move in, if you've killed 1 or 2, the 4 or 5 that are left are actually going to do serious damage. So it incentivizes you to bring those bigger bricks. However, I think that in itself plays counter to the way that World Eaters play best, which is like lots of small units that are independent and autonomous. And that way you can have everything hidden and you can commit just 3 Exalted 8-bound this turn. I'm going to send them out. They're going to kill something. They're going to die in return, but I'm okay with that because I have another 3 back here, and I'm able to do that again next turn.
Yeah, agree.
Whereas if you go down this route and you have these big bricks, all of a sudden you're forced into these massive overcommitments where you're sending out 8 Exalted 8-bound, to kill something that 3 probably would have killed, and then you lose
Yeah.
all 6 instead of losing just the 3.
Exactly right. On that note, man, we're going to wrap up this part 1. But before we do, as a World Eaters player, out of 10, how happy are you with this detachment?
I'd say a solid 7 or 8. It's a very good detachment. I think it's just overshadowed by the fact that the detachment we started with was one of the best in the game. So
Yeah,
I think GW did an amazing job to get it as close to as powerful as they did. So yeah, very happy with it.
Yeah, I echo that as well. And on the competitive tier list from D tier all the way up to S tier, where do you think this detachment lies?
Within the context of World Eaters or within the context of the meta as a whole?
The meta as a whole.
It's relatively low, probably C tier.
Yeah, I put it C, the top of C-ish, lower part of B. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it sounds like we're in agreement. Well, on that note, mate, let's go over and record part 2. We're going to especially be talking about matchups for World Eaters in the in the meta at the moment. Talk about what they have going for them, what they don't have going for them, etc. And of course, everything you learned from Uprising and what you would change about your list in hindsight or now with what you've learned. So, dude, where can people catch some more of you again if they're looking to?
So go to blog for the Blood God. I've got YouTube channel. I've got a website. Just Google it. You'll get it. And that's a great place to find. I do reviews of every event that I go to, so deep dives on every matchup, talking about what worked, what didn't work, the list analysis, tons of really good information on World Eaters there. That's probably the best place to find me.
Fan-freaking-tastic, and still one of the best named 40K related anything ever.
Yeah.
So good. Still so good. Over a decade on, still so good. Anyway, we're out of here. Thank you so much for joining us over in part 2. That's the end of this episode. That's the end of Grotmas. Grotmas is finally over for us at Art of War Down Under, and we should have the Emperor's Children Codex review coming next week now that it has been announced. Cannot wait for you guys to enjoy that. See you next week. Take care, and look after each other. Thanks again, Dean, for coming on.
Thank you.
You know that I can take more. I break free for wanting to. Focus on the good times gone, the hot times won.